Chapter 8:18. Ling Jing's wound really hurt at first. He didn't expect the woman to kick him when she answered the phone. He almost couldn't pretend anymore. He wanted to get up and teach the woman a lesson. However, the woman put the kitchen knife aside after hanging up the phone. After looking at Ling Jing's face for a long time, she finally made her move. After a long time, she finally got him on the bed. Su Peijian looked at the blood on her body, and a flash of disgust appeared in her eyes again. Looking at the blood and water stains on the other party, she decided to ask Xiao Zhao to throw the bedsheet away tomorrow. However, that was all she was willing to do. If you can make it through, consider yourself lucky. If you bleed too much and die, it's your bad luck. Then don't blame me. After saying this, Su Peijian went straight to the shower. She had wasted too much of her energy dealing with work and socializing with others today. After the shower, she didn't even look at Ling Jing and went straight to her room to sleep. Naturally, she didn't know that after she fell asleep, Ling Jing quietly snuck into Su Peijian's room. She was sleeping defenseless, but he had the urge to strangle this woman to death. Damn it! Damned woman. If I don't take revenge for today, I'll definitely die. If I don't take revenge today, I won't let you submit to me in the future. My surname isn't Ling. Ling Jing didn't know who would submit to whom in the future. It was really a problem. Life in prison was very regular. Every morning, she had to get up at the same time. The time of waking up and eating were fixed. In the past 2 years, Su Peijian had developed an excellent routine. She got up at 6 in the morning and went to bed at 10 at night. She didn't need to turn on the alarm clock. Her biological clock hit 6 and she woke up on time. When she got up, she had automatically forgotten her decision yesterday and the man in the study. She went to the kitchen to make breakfast for herself. She had asked someone to send the ingredients over yesterday. Su Peijian planned to make herself a fruit salad, toast, and a glass of milk. She was very relaxed. She stretched her limbs and went to the kitchen. This was the time when she was the most relaxed. It didn't take more than 20 minutes to prepare breakfast. Her knife skills were very poor, but after practicing for a long time, she had peeled some fruit. At least it wouldn't be like the beginning, with different sizes. Back in the Su family, when had she ever made a move on him? Every time she moved her mouth, someone would prepare it for her and deliver it to her. But one day, when she really had to do these things herself, she realized that it was actually a little fun. After breakfast, Su Peijian placed the plates in the kitchen sink. Xiao Zhao would come over later, and she would clean it up. She went back to her room and changed her clothes. Then, she did her skincare routine and put on some light makeup. She picked up her bag and phone, ready to go to work. When she reached the door, she suddenly remembered. The man from yesterday seemed to still be at home. She had left him on the bed just like that. Who knew what had happened to him? Could he have bled to death? Su Peijian frowned, put down her bag, and went to the study. On the bed, the man's chest was still stained with blood. Not only his chest, but the bed sheets were also stained with blood. That was not the main point. The main point was the man sleeping on the bed. His face was flushed, and his breathing was rapid. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. This man couldn't be dying, right? Suppressing his disdainful expression, he placed his hand on her forehead. It was indeed boiling hot. The annoyance in her eyes deepened. She hated trouble, and this man represented trouble. However, since she had decided to keep him, she could only deal with this trouble first. She called the doctor. After examining the man, it was confirmed that the wound was infected and had a fever. It was not a big problem, but it could be fatal if it was serious. The doctor retreated the man's wound. The well-sutured wound opened again, and the doctor had to resuture it. He did not bring anesthesia, but fortunately, the man was confused from the fever. The doctor was afraid that the man would move, so he motioned for Su-Peision to help hold his body. Su-Peision narrowed her eyes. She really did not want to touch this man. However, when she thought of her final goal, she finally agreed. In fact, the doctor was really worried. At this time, Ling Jing really had a fever, and he was a little confused and unconscious. Not to mention stitching him up, even if she stabbed him again, he probably wouldn't feel anything at all. After she finally resutured the wound, Su-Peision thought of a problem. That day when she called Xiao Zhao over, when Xiao Zhao treated this man's wound, did she stitch him? Why did she remember not? Since the other party did not have stitches, then who treated the previous wound? The doctor began to work. The man seemed to feel the pain even though he was in a coma. He groaned in a low voice. Staring at the man's good skin, Su-Peision still stepped forward and reached out to press the man's shoulder. The doctor quickly and neatly treated the man's wound. Fortunately, although the previous punch was heavy, it did not completely split open. This man was also lucky. After such a series of tortures and even a wound that was not properly sutured, he was still lucky enough to survive. She watched the doctor put an intravenous drip on him and told him some things to pay attention to. After she sent the doctor away, she called Xiao Zhao to take care of him. As for asking Su-Peision to take care of this man. Miss Su had never taken care of anyone in her life. She asked Xiao Zhao to take care of the man and call the doctor if there was a problem. It was useless to call her. She was not a doctor. As for whether the man was dead or alive, and how long he could last, it would depend on his luck. Su-Peision said this and went to do her own things. The department store needed to be improved, and the company had a lot of things to do. She made an appointment with the people from the e-commerce platform, signed the contract, and cleaned up the company's internal affairs. She had been very busy these days. In addition, because of Manager Wang a few days ago, she had to go home to accompany Xiang Kaiping and worry about her feelings. After cleaning up the company, she accompanied Xiang Kaiping for the new year. It had been more than a week since she picked up the man. On the last day of the New Year's holiday, Su-Peision finally remembered that the man she had decided to keep was still at her house. When Xiao Zhao first took care of the man, he would call her and tell her about the situation. Later, she became busy and did not have the patience to listen to him anymore, so she let Xiao Zhao make the decision himself. She gave Xiao Zhao double his salary and told him to just do his work and not to worry about anything else. After informing Xiang Kaiping, Su-Peision went to Rome Garden. She had not been back for a few days. Before going upstairs, she asked someone to bring back fruits and food as usual. When she entered the door, Xiao Zhao was about to leave. Seeing her come in, he glanced at the study. Miss Su, Mr. Ling has woken up. Also, his wound is almost healed. I just cooked for him. I got it. Miss Su, have you eaten? Yes, I have. There's nothing for you to do here. You can leave now. Xiao Zhao left, but the man did not come out. Su-Peision looked at the time. It was 7:30 p.m. Entering the study, she saw the man sitting in front of her desk. Her laptop was open. The speaker was turned on, and it sounded a little noisy. She frowned, stepped forward, and walked to the desk. Who allowed you to touch my computer? The man opened the game interface. Hearing the gunshots, Su-Peision's head hurt. You didn't say that I wasn't allowed. The man kept moving his hands, as if he was having fun. He was still naked, and his chest was wrapped in gauze. I remember that my laptop has a password. Su-Peision crossed her arms in front of her chest. Password of this level. Ling Jing sneered and looked at Su-Peision sympathetically. Are you kidding me? Su Peijian felt a little pain in the back of her teeth. Fortunately, she usually used the laptop at home to deal with some unimportant business matters. Moreover, she had bought a new laptop after she was released from prison, and there was not even a photo in it. Resisting the urge to beat the man up, she stared at his face for a while. After a few days, a lot of stubble had grown on his chin. She didn't have a shaving tool for the man here. The man's hair was still a little messy, and he looked a little sloppy. Su Peijian couldn't help but frown. I don't seem to be short of water here. Is there a shortage of water? But I'm a patient. Ling Jing stopped playing the game and pointed to his chest. Miss, do you still remember the punch you gave me that day? His wound had been stitched up, but it was split open by her punch. He had been sick for a few days. Although he was sick these days, he knew that the woman had not come back even once. Not only did she not come back, but when Xiao Zhao, who was helping outside, called her and told her about his situation, the woman didn't even listen. Not only did she not come back, but when Xiao Zhao, who was helping outside, called her and told her about his situation, this woman did not even listen. If he really died, this woman probably wouldn't have any psychological burden at all. If he really died, this woman probably wouldn't have any psychological burden at all. This woman was really cruel. She was really not like a normal person. It wasn't easy for him to feel better today. But this woman came back at this time. He closed the game page and stood up with his hand on his chest. Beauty, your punch made me sick for so many days. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me? Su Peijian picked up the knife on the desk and directly pressed it against his chest. Either I stab you again, or you go take a shower and clean yourself up. What if I don't choose either? Su Peijian pressed the knife a little deeper into his bandage. You will choose. You know, I can do it. You won't. If you really wanted to kill me, you wouldn't have saved me. I didn't save you. Su Peijian's voice was very cold. Even if I saved you, I can go back on my word and kill you. Woman, have you always been like this, moody? Su Peijian held the knife, and the sharp tip had already cut the first layer of Ling Jing's bandage. She was expressionless, but there was a hidden killing intent in her eyes. Ling Jing had lived for so many years, but it was the first time he had met such a woman. The interest in his eyes became more and more obvious. Ignoring the knife against his chest, he moved forward a little. Beauty, you're not going to do bad things to me by asking me to take a shower, are you? Su Peijian's reaction was to put away the knife in her hand, walk to the desk and sit down. She didn't answer him, and Ling Jing felt bored. But the desire to conquer her appeared in his eyes again. This woman, he really wanted to see what she would look like under him one day. Su Peijian watched the man obediently take a shower. She closed the game page, opened the document, and typed quickly on the keyboard. In less than 20 minutes, a contract was completed. She printed out the contract and took the 2 contracts out of the study. When she left the study, Ling Jing had already taken a shower. Su Peijian sat down on the sofa and gave him a look, signaling him to come over. Ling Jing's hair was still dripping with water, and the bandage had been removed by him. The slightly hideous scar on his chest was exposed. The scar did not damage the man's aura. The slightly wet hair, the strong chest, and the long scar. The whole person gave people the feeling that there was a bit of evil in the evilness, and there was a bit of danger in the arrogance. Seeing the man like this, Su Peijian's slightly gloomy face eased a little. The appearance was not bad, but she didn't know if it was good to look at. However, just because of this face, there was no harm in keeping it. Ling Jing noticed that she was staring at him, and he put on an extremely light smile. What? Do you suddenly realize that my charm is boundless? Are you falling in love with me? Su Peijian ignored his words. Sit. Ling Jing sat down and found that there were a few more chairs on the coffee table in the living room, and Su Peijian's voice was in his ears. My name is Su Peijian. What's your name? Ling Jing touched his chin and looked at Su Peijian's face. What? Beauty, do you really fall in love with me? Name. Su Peijian's eyes were slightly cold, and she stared straight at him. Ling Jing. Ling as in ambition, and Jing as in beauty. When Ling Jing said these two words, he didn't forget to see Su Peijian's reaction. One had to know that in Rome City, there were not many people with the surname Ling. Su Peijian didn't care which two words it was, and she didn't have any special feelings about this name. She didn't even care whether this name was real or fake. She pushed the document in front of Ling Jing. She motioned for him to take a look. Ling Jing picked up the document, and his attitude changed when he saw the words on the document clearly. There weren't many documents, only one page. The content of the two papers was the same. Party A and Party B were clearly written. Only the signature at the back was missing. You. Ling Jing stared at the woman in front of him with his eyes wide open. You want to support me? The huge anger made his tone different from his usual calm, but when he said the word support, there was a bit of hostility. Su Peijian didn't seem to notice. It's not hard to guess, is it? Woman. You. He was the dignified young master of the Ling family, a genius with an IQ of more than 220, who graduated from Harvard at the age of 18. How could this woman think of him as a gigolo? Where did her courage and confidence come from? How dare she say that she wanted to support him? Su Peijian didn't have time to listen to him. She was the most direct person. She didn't like to repeat things that could be said in one sentence. You can also think of this as a kind of employment relationship. You can think of this as a job. The difference is that you only need to serve me. Ling Jing was so angry that he almost laughed. He tightened his grip on the paper, and blue veins appeared on the back of his hand. Then I wonder, what kind of conditions do you plan to support me with, Miss Su? And how long do you plan to support me? How long? Su Peijian didn't think of this. She had been too bored recently. She wasn't sure if she would still be interested in the man in front of her after this boring period. As for the conditions, she really didn't know what the conditions in Rome City were like. Thinking of the secrets she had heard when she was in Lin City, she gave a condition that she felt was relatively generous. 6 months, temporarily. You can stay by my side for 6 months. 6 months. 2 million. 2 million. If Ling Jing's anger at this time had a physical body, he would probably have been burned by that fire. He, the dignified young master of the Ling family, had hundreds of millions of assets under his name. Now, there was a woman who said that she would support him for 6 months with 2 million. He stared at Su Peijian with wide eyes. Good, very good. Damn woman. You've successfully pissed me off. 2 million for 6 months. If he didn't teach this woman a lesson, he didn't need to be the young master of the Ling family. 2 million. I only need to accompany you for 6 months. Only 2 million. To put it bluntly, 2 million for 6 months. For 6 months, your time is mine. Of course, his body was also. Actually, Su Peijian wasn't sure how long this relationship would last, but to her, 6 months should be enough. Ling Jing nodded with a smile, and there was a flash of murderous intent in his eyes. You're so generous. Generous. Su Peijian didn't care about this small amount of money. After thinking about it, she added another condition. As long as you think it's suitable. However, there are a few conditions on it that I have to tell you again. Our temporary employment relationship is for 6 months. During these 6 months, you are not allowed to have other women. You will live here for these 6 months. I may not come often, but I want to see you every time I come. The murderous intent in Ling Jing's eyes didn't fade. He looked at Su Peijian with anger and smiled. So, you mean that I can only wait here for you for these 6 months? You can think of it that way. Su Peijian did mean that. But you don't have to worry. I don't have time to come here all the time. You can do what you like during the day. Of course, except for women. If she stayed here all the time and didn't go back to the villa to accompany Xiang Kaiping, she was afraid that Xiang Caiping's heart would be even more fragile. As for not letting him find another woman, she didn't think it was too much. Since he had signed the contract, he naturally had to be loyal. Moreover, she was a neat freak. She wouldn't accept a man who had a relationship with another woman when he had a relationship with her. Ling Jing, who had always been unruly, resisted the urge to kill and stood directly in front of Su Peijian on the sofa. Now he was absolutely sure that this woman didn't know who he was. If she did, probably no woman would dare to speak to him in such a tone and with such an attitude. He nodded and raised his hand to pinch Su Peijian's chin. Because of his action, she tilted her face to the side, avoiding his hand. Chapter 8:19. The living room was very quiet. After she avoided it, Ling Jing put his hand on her chin again. One of them was sitting, and the other was standing. He was half bent over. Staring at the beautiful face in front of him. She was beautiful. But she was a vicious woman. His extremely beautiful almond-shaped eyes stared at her eyes. If it were any other woman, she would definitely scream and throw herself into his arms. However, Su Peijian was not an ordinary woman. She calmly put her hand on the wound on Ling Jing's chest. Let me remind you. The doctor told you to avoid strenuous exercise. You can skip it today. The main thing was that she was not ready to have sex with a man who was a complete stranger. Do you think I can't do it? Ling Jing narrowed his eyes. The most intolerable thing for a man was to be questioned by others. Do you want to say that you can do it now? The hideous scar was right in front of her. She retracted her finger, changed it to a palm, and pressed it easily. Ling Jing was in pain, but he stubbornly did not step back. I can still bear this kind of pain. Really? Su Peijian increased her strength. It seemed that his wound was not yet at the point where the stitches could be removed. Even if it could, it would still hurt now. She sneered and increased the strength of her hand. Ling Jing was in pain, and his body uncontrollably took a step back. You can bear it, but I can't. Su Peijian glanced at the scar on his chest, and her eyes were filled with disgust that Ling Jing could not bear. It looks too ugly. It doesn't suit my taste. The air suddenly became silent at this moment. Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian in disbelief. Said that he was ugly. No, even if it was just that his scar was too ugly, he could not bear it. A man with a scar looked more sexy and masculine. This woman was simply too much. He came to his senses and reached out to Su Peijian. At this moment, he, who had lost all reason, planned to teach this woman a lesson. However, Su Peijian was not in the mood today. She had already gone to her room. Ling Jing stood in the living room, only feeling a fire rushing to his head. He had 1,000 reasons to cut that damn woman into 1,000 pieces. However, the more angry he was, the calmer he became. Staring at the closed door, Ling Jing nodded her head vigorously. Woman, if I don't teach you a lesson, my surname isn't Ling. Raising his hand to look at the watch on his wrist, he issued a command. Help me investigate a woman. The more detailed, the better. When Ling Jing got up in the morning, Su Peijian was already up. She was cooking breakfast in the kitchen. Salad, sandwiches, milk. He found the woman's breakfast to be rather lackluster. Hearing the footsteps behind her, Su Peijian did not stop what she was doing. The only difference was that she also kindly made one for Ling Jing today. After all, Ling Jing would be like a pet to her in the future. Since it was a pet, it was better to treat it better. It was just like how she used to have a dog. She had to prepare dog food for it, right? Seeing that Su Peijian had prepared breakfast for her, Ling Jing finally looked better. However, if he knew that he was nothing more than a dog in Su Peijian's heart, he probably wouldn't be happy. Ling Jing had found out last time that Su Peijian seemed to be from a good family. Watching her eat without making a sound. There was a kind of temperament that was in her bones. He was even more curious about this woman now. Of course, half of the reason for this curiosity was that he wanted to mess with this woman. This kind of emotion was very inexplicable, but he was really curious. It wasn't that Su Peijian didn't feel Ling Jing's gaze, but she didn't care at all. She had never been a big eater. Putting down the milk in her hand, she glanced at Ling Jing and pushed a card in front of him. "There's $1 million in this. Someone will send you clothes later. As for the rest, you can buy them yourself. I'll give you the remaining $1 million after 6 months." Ling Jing looked at the card and didn't know what expression he could put on. This damn woman really knew how to provoke him. "Aren't you afraid that I'll take this $1 million and leave? Will you?" Su Peijian raised her eyebrows, her expression extremely calm. She regarded Ling Jing as an ordinary hooligan. After 6 months, he could still get the remaining $1 million. She didn't believe that this man would be willing to run away from such a good thing. Of course not. When Ling Jing said this, she was already gnashing her teeth in anger. Su Peijian wasn't surprised at all. "I guessed so. Your eyesight isn't that shallow. Should I thank you for thinking so highly of me?" "No need." Su Peijian shook her head. "I'm just telling the truth." Her truth was even more unbearable, okay? Su Peijian finished what she wanted to say and stood up. Before returning to Zhongqing Express, she saw the contract from the corner of her eye. "Take some time to sign the contract. I hope it's already signed when I come back." Miss Su, this woman really knew how to make him angry no matter what. "Call me by my name, or Peijian. I don't want you to call me Miss Su when we have sex." Her tone was cold, as if she was talking about the weather, talking about what might happen between the two of them. Ling Jing resisted the urge to get up and beat this woman up, constantly reminding himself. He didn't hit women, he didn't hit women. After taking a few deep breaths, he finally managed to suppress his anger. He got up and walked in front of Su Peijian, blocking her way. He raised his eyebrows slightly. She clearly saw the playfulness in his eyes. "Peijian. What a good name. But, how about I call you darling?" Su Peijian frowned slightly because of his tone. She looked at Ling Jing's self-righteous provocation expressionlessly and withdrew her gaze. "Up to you. Darling, you're really easy to talk to." Ling Jing stretched out his hand and put his arm around her waist. "Why don't we try kissing first?" His appearance was enchanting and his behavior was evil. In the past, when he acted like this, he didn't know how many women he could charm. However, Su Peijian pushed him away calmly as if she didn't see his charm. "No need." She took a step back and said without thinking when she passed by him, "You didn't brush your teeth." "I think it's dirty." If Ling Jing only felt chest tightness just now, it would have been chest pain now. "What did you say?" Grabbing her wrist and blocking her way, Ling Jing unconsciously exerted force in his hand. Su Peijian looked at him expressionlessly and coldly. You want to say that you brushed your teeth? Was that the point? Ling Jing never thought that one day he would talk to a woman about such a topic here. Chapter 820. Hearing this, Ling Jing's face darkened. What kind of explanation was that? Also, why did he have to explain this to this woman? Really? That's good. Keep it up. Su Peijian shook off his hand and went back to her room to change. Ling Jing was embarrassed and angry. Damn this woman. Good, very good. He resisted the urge to pull that woman over and kiss her. He looked at the figure of the other party's back and suppressed his anger. Woman. Don't let him know her weakness, otherwise. Soon after Su Peijian left, Xiao Zhao brought clothes over. Xiao Zhao not only came to deliver clothes but also to cook for Ling Jing. However, after putting on the clothes, Ling Jing said that he was going out and asked Xiao Zhao to go back first. Soon after Xiao Zhao left, someone came to the door again. Gu Xiu looked at Ling Jing and really didn't understand why he didn't go home. Young master, your injury is almost healed. When will you go back to the house to take charge? Who said I'm going back? Ling Jing stared at the person in front of him. Didn't I ask you to see who is playing tricks in the house? You tell me. What have you observed these past few days? Young master. These days, the old master was not feeling well. He called the fourth and fifth young masters. After observing them, there seemed to be nothing unusual. The third and second young masters were not at home these days. I don't know what they were busy with. The first young master cared about you a little, but because you were not at home, he sent more people to look for you outside. Every time he mentioned you in front of the old master, he was also worried. The fourth and fifth young masters would agree. You mean, you have been observing for a week and you haven't found anything? I am incompetent. It is really that the young master is missing. I don't look for him outside. I keep an eye on the young masters every day. I am afraid they will be suspicious. Forget it. Ling Jing waved his hand. He knew that whether it was a group of little foxes or an old fox, it didn't matter. If it was so easy to give himself away, he wouldn't have stayed here. The woman I asked you to investigate yesterday, have you checked? What woman? Gu Xiu looked puzzled. Of course, the owner of this house. Su Peijian. I want all the information about her, the more detailed the better. I will go right away. Gu Xiu turned to leave, but Ling Jing suddenly stopped him. Wait. Young master, what else? Here. Ling Jing handed the card that Su Peijian had given him to Gu Xiu. Buy me a car and send me some clothes according to my usual preferences. I want all of them. Also, I want all of my daily necessities according to my usual habits. Until you spend all the money in this card. Didn't that woman want him to be a gigolo? He would take it as a show for her. He wanted to see what kind of expression that woman would have when she found out that he had spent 1,000,000 yuan in one day. Young master, if you want to drive, I can just drive it over from the garage. After Gu Xiu said this, he saw Ling Jing's cold eyes. He shrunk his neck and said, it's this subordinate's thoughtlessness. If I had driven my house's car, I would have been discovered by others. It was even young master's blessing. Please forgive me, young master. This subordinate will do it right away. All right, enough with the nonsense. Hurry up and finish it. Also, I want to see all the information on that woman before tomorrow. Yes. When Su Peijian applied for a credit card, the bank had automatically activated a reminder function for her. She didn't expect that there would be more than a dozen text messages on her phone when she came back from a meeting. Look at the spending records displayed on it. From the car, to the clothes, and even to the daily necessities. Su Peijian's schedule for the day was very full. During the day, in addition to company business, she also arranged to have dinner with several manufacturers. Even when she was on the road, she could hear the text message notification. Sure enough, in the evening, the card had been maxed out. Su Peijian looked at the text message before getting out of the car. She didn't feel very angry, but she just felt that she had not read it wrong. A gangster suddenly had a large amount of wealth. Not only would he not think about saving it, but he would also spend it. This kind of person was a typical nouveau riche mentality after excessive scarcity. This was also good. After all, a man like this who had desires and was easy to control made people feel safer and more at ease. After socializing with the clients, Su Peijian, who was about to go home, thought about it and decided to continue to roam garden. That little gangster could actually spend more than 1,000,000 yuan in a day. It was also amazing. When the car drove into the underground parking lot, she saw a new Cadillac next to it. Su Peijian glanced at the car and went straight upstairs. There was no one in the living room, no one in the study. Su Peijian narrowed her eyes. That little gangster couldn't have spent all her 1,000,000 yuan and run away just like that, could he? Just as she was thinking about whether to call the police to find that little gangster, she heard movement in her room. Su Peijian's expression changed. To her, her room was her private territory. She didn't like others stepping into it. She put her bag aside and quickly entered the room. As expected, the room was brightly lit, and the sound of water came from the bathroom. She entered the bathroom with a cold face. In the jacuzzi that she had customized, that little gangster was soaking in it with a satisfied look on his face. The water just reached the bottom of his chest, just avoiding the scar. His chest was strong, which was the opposite of his appearance. However, Su Peijian was not in the mood to appreciate it. Looking at the little gangster's face, her voice was quite gloomy. "This is my room. I don't think I gave you permission to come in. You didn't say that I couldn't." Ling Jing took a deep breath, as if he was enjoying the comfort of the jacuzzi. "Who asked you to have a bathtub in this room? You're really self-aware. Did I say that you could use this bathroom?" Su Peijian felt offended. She was wondering if she should disinfect the entire bathtub with 84 disinfectant. "Darling, you're not cute like this." Ling Jing stood up boldly, not minding his current naked state at all. "No matter what, we're going to be one in the future. I'm just using your bathtub. It shouldn't be a big crime, right?" Su Peijian acted as if she didn't see his figure. She only stared at his face with extreme calmness. "It seems that some parts of yesterday's contract weren't written clearly. It's necessary for me to set new rules with you." "Rules?" Ling Jing lowered his head and glanced at himself. His body proportion could be said to be perfect, but this woman actually didn't feel it at all. Chapter 821. Ling Jing deliberately stood in front of Su Peijian. One of his hands turned to support the wall on the side of her neck, and the other hand wrapped around her waist. The distance between the two of them was so close that Su Peijian could smell the refreshing shower gel on his body. That was her usual brand, which smelled like orange. But when this man used it, it smelled different. In addition to the smell of orange, there was also the other party's masculine smell. Looking at Ling Jing's self-righteous charm and the confident smile on Ling Jing's face, Su Peijian raised her hand and pushed him away with force on his chest. "I'm sorry to disappoint you. I really don't have any thoughts." Su Peijian took a step back and looked at the water splashed all over the floor after Ling Jing came out of the bathtub. Then she looked at the pile of foam in the bathtub. Her eyes became colder as she turned to look at Ling Jing. "I think you probably haven't figured out your identity yet. Then I don't mind reminding you again. First, I'm the boss here, and I have the final say. Whether you're willing or not, if you accept my $1,000,000 yuan, it means that you've acquiesced to this relationship. Then during this period of time, you must abide by the rules I set. Listen carefully, this is a must. Second, you don't need to put on such an attitude. Since I proposed such a relationship, it's only a matter of time whether or not to do it with you. And I'm not in the mood right now. So, please get out. Her eyes were calm, and her expression was calm. There was no evidence in her eyes that she was moved by him. Su Peijian's reaction dealt a huge blow to Ling Jing. He thought that in the past, he had always been successful with women. Although there were almost none of those women that he liked. But there weren't many women like Su Peijian, who could easily make him want to explode, get angry, and even have the urge to grab this woman and beat her up. Ling Jing didn't know what was wrong with him. He suddenly took 2 steps forward and trapped Su Peijian in his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her lips without hesitation. This woman only knew how to say things that made him unhappy. Since that was the case, then he would make her unable to speak. Su Peijian frowned because of Ling Jing's actions. It was true that she wanted to raise a man. But she needed a man who was obedient and easy to control. Just like Hui Yifan. She could easily toy with him. She felt that the man spending today was within her expectations. However, she didn't like the fact that he was kissing her forcefully. She was Master Jean, so naturally, she had the final say in their relationship. She was very unhappy with Ling Jing's forced kiss. She raised her hand and pressed it hard on Ling Jing's chest. He exerted force with his fingertips. Ling Jing seemed to know what she was thinking. She endured the pain, not only did she not retreat, but she kissed her deeper. Damn woman. Time and time again, he had provoked him, and time again, he had added injuries on top of his injuries. What? Did she think this would make him back down? Yours truly was not someone who would admit defeat easily. Not only did he not loosen his grip, but he also tightened his grip around Su Peijian's waist. His other hand pressed against the back of her neck, deepening the kiss. He used all his skills to make Su Peijian submit to him. However, he was stimulated by her sweetness and became more and more serious as he kissed her. The pain in his chest became an indirect stimulus. His anger rose, and now he just wanted to tear this woman apart and devour her. Su Peijian originally wanted Ling Jing to let go of her. However, she didn't expect Ling Jing to not be afraid of pain even after she used so much force. Was the wound really healed? She didn't know which kind it was. The other party's kiss was domineering and flamboyant, completely different from the previous Hui Yifan. All along, in the relationship between her and Hui Yifan, she had been the dominant one. Now, with her pride, how could she bear it? This man was the dominant one in this relationship with her. His kissing skills were not bad, but so what? Su Peijian was kissed by him. Her body, which had been empty for more than 2 years, really had a desire at this time. She put her hand on his chest up and directly hooked it around his neck. She turned from guest to host. She didn't have much experience, and it all came from her previous relationship. However, with her looks, figure, and innate intelligence, she was much more perceptive than the average person when it came to such matters. It wasn't just Ling Jing's forced kiss. It was her counterattack. She was the home court of this relationship, and she had the final say. She hooked her arms around his neck, and her other hand wasn't idle either. She couldn't touch the wound, but she could always touch other places. Ling Jing didn't expect that he would have a reaction to a woman's kiss. His eyes were a little red. He, who had never admitted defeat, was breathing rapidly at this moment. He wished he could do this woman on the spot. Su Peijian noticed his change and sneered. It was a kind of arrogance that was in control of everything. With the force of her hand, she stepped back as he let out a low cry. She approached him again, tiptoed, and pressed her forehead against his. "Do you want it?" This line had always been said by Ling Jing to those women in the past. She never thought that one day, a woman would say such words to her. "You make me comfortable, or get lost." Even at this time, Su Peijian stayed calm and rational. Ling Jing's face turned green. He gritted his teeth, endured the pain in his chest, and picked up Su Peijian and went outside. This was a war without gunpowder. He wanted her to succumb to his charm, and she wanted him to understand his situation. He used force, and she used force even more. He used more force, and she was crazier than him. It was like a rock that was constantly being washed by the waves. The waves wanted to smash the rock, but the rock blocked the waves. Back and forth, over and over again. Ling Jing couldn't tell how many scratches and bite marks he had on his body. The harder she scratched and the more painful it was, the crazier he became. Su Peijian was exhausted. In the end, she propped herself up and went to the bathroom to take a shower. When she returned to the bed, she didn't even take off the sheets and fell asleep. After a whole night of pleasure, Su Peijian almost couldn't get up the next morning. The moment she opened her eyes, she realized that the quality of her sleep last night was particularly good. She slept very soundly and didn't even dream for half a minute. The ancients said that yin and yang were in harmony, which made some sense. He stretched his body. When Su Peijian got out of bed, she realized that her feet were a little weak. She frowned slightly and turned to look at Ling Jing on the bed. Not bad, he looked thin, but his figure was not bad. He was obviously injured, but his ability was quite strong. Keeping this person alive was worth the 2 million yuan. After stretching her limbs, she went to the kitchen to make breakfast for herself. She also made one for Ling Jing. As if thinking of some unspeakable scenes, she also specially added 2 eggs to Ling Jing's sandwich. Of course, this wasn't because of feelings, but because she felt comfortable last night and was in a good mood. She didn't mind giving her pet a little benefit. That's right, after last night, Ling Jing had become an exclusive pet in Su Peijian's heart. If this pet's performance could satisfy her, she would give him more money after 6 months. Su Peijian's mind was purely about the transaction, so after breakfast, she changed her clothes and went straight to work. She was used to arriving at the company half an hour earlier. As for Ling Jing, after that, she threw it to the back of her mind. After all, who would care about what a pet thought? Ling Jing slept very soundly. His injury hadn't fully recovered yet. The amount of exercise yesterday still tore the wound. Later, it was completely based on his unwillingness to admit defeat. Unexpectedly, he didn't take advantage of it at all. When he woke up, Ling Jing was surprised by the slight fatigue in his body. He wasn't a young boy. He had had women in the past, but no matter how many times he had done it in a night, it was the first time he had felt such a carefree feeling. That woman wasn't like the women who had slept with him in the past. They were either young and inexperienced, or skilled, but they lacked a little excitement. After all, there had never been a woman who wasn't afraid of death who dared to leave so many marks on his body. Su Peijian's reaction in bed was very real and very passionate. When she was aroused, she would bite. The deep teeth marks on his shoulder were proof of her arousal. And the more she was like this, the more intense his reaction was. In the end, he didn't know whether it was because of his unwillingness to admit defeat that he wanted her to beg for mercy that he had the upper hand. Or was it because he surrendered to Su Peijian's passionate reaction and only wanted her to respond more passionately? When he got up, he found that the room was empty. He frowned slightly. He thought about the previous few times that the woman had been cooking in the kitchen. He didn't know why, but he really wanted to see that woman's expression as soon as possible. He had worked so hard yesterday, that woman should have shown some performance, right? However, Ling Jing didn't expect that there was no one in the kitchen, nor in the study. Looking at the cold breakfast on the dining table, he was extremely sure that the woman had really left. That damned woman, she had broken his habit again. He had always been the one in a hurry to leave a woman's bed. This was the first time that a woman couldn't wait to leave his bed. Ling Jing gritted his teeth and resisted the urge to find that woman and teach her a lesson. The moment he lowered his head, he looked at the marks on his body. An inexplicable thought flashed through his mind. He was the one who had been raped by his girlfriend. Su Peijian was that irresponsible female customer. She was completely irresponsible to his girlfriend. As soon as this thought came to his mind, Ling Jing felt terrible. You said she was irresponsible? Her words from yesterday were still ringing in his ears. She paid, and he did the work. He had originally wanted her to come to him. Damn it. That damned woman. How could there be such a hateful woman? His face was gloomy, and his hands were tightly clenched into fists. That woman, he must make her pay the price. He decided that tonight, he must try his best to provoke all of Su Peijian's reactions. Then, she just wouldn't give it to him. He must teach her a lesson. He must. However, to Ling Jing's disappointment, when he got off work and waited until 9:00 in the evening, that woman actually didn't come back. Ling Jing's face became even more ugly. In Su Peijian's apartment, which was too small for him to use as a bathroom, he still lost his temper. He wanted to contact that woman, but he remembered that that woman didn't give him any contact information at all. Ling Jing felt not only a headache, but also a pain in his wound. It was at this time that Gu Xiu bumped into him and brought over a thick stack of information. Young master, I have found out what you asked me to find out. Ling Jing had never been so angry. He was waiting for that damned woman to come to his door, but that damned woman actually didn't come home. Looking at the stack of information, he picked it up without thinking. So much. You said to be more detailed. Ling Jing nodded. Yes. Of course, it had to be more detailed. The more detailed, the more he could know that woman's weakness, and the easier it would be to deal with her. The moment he opened the information, he glanced at Gu Xiu. By the way, help me find out where that woman is now. Gu Xiu was stunned. He looked at Ling Jing and felt that the young master was a little abnormal today. He couldn't help but take another look at Ling Jing. This look didn't matter, but it gave him a fright. Ling Jing wanted to see his subordinates, so naturally, he was wearing clothes. However, there were two obvious scratch marks on his neck above his collar. In addition to those two scratch marks, he looked at the mark below, which seemed to be a bite mark. Damn, how could there be a bite mark on the young master's body? Who bit him? He thought of the young master asking him to find out where that woman was. Gu Xiu's eyes widened. It couldn't be what he thought, could it? That woman was not simple. What's wrong? Is there a problem? No, no problem. Gu Xiu lowered his head and didn't dare to look at Ling Jing again. The mark on Ling Jing's neck made it impossible for him to look directly at the young master. I'll go check it now. Hurry up and tell me immediately when you find it. Ling Jing waved his hand and signaled Gu Xiu to get out of here. He was about to concentrate on the stack of information, but he suddenly realized something after Gu Xiu closed the door. He quickly got up and went to the bathroom. He successfully saw the unconcealable mark on his neck in the mirror. Ling Jing's face turned green. He suddenly punched the wall, and his gloomy face was as black as a pot lid. Su Peijian, damn that woman. She really deserved a lesson. Su Peijian, who was eating with Xiang Kaiping, felt a little itchy in her ear. She calmly drank a mouthful of soup, not taking this indifferent feeling to heart. Xiang Kaiping watched her drink the soup with a smile in her eyes. I started stewing this soup this morning. I see that you've been working hard recently. Drink more and nourish yourself. Thank you, Mom. Child, I've already said that you don't have to thank me. Su Peijian didn't respond. She had experienced many things and had long seen it clearly. Even if they were close relatives, it didn't mean that they were obligated to do anything for you. Moreover, she was already an adult. Peijian. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peijian and thought about why she had to come home for dinner today. Do you still remember Mrs. Lin from the 5th villa next to us? Mrs. Lin. Su Peijian had some impression of her. The one with a golden retriever at home. She seemed to have seen Mrs. Lin walking the dog when she was running in the morning. Yes. Didn't her golden retriever run around and rush into our garden? It damaged a lot of the flowers I planted. I even told you about it. Yes, why? Did her golden retriever destroy our garden again? She didn't notice when she came in just now. Did Xiang Kaiping ask her to find someone to raise the fence? No. It's nothing. Xiang Kaiping quickly explained, here's the thing. I went for a walk today and happened to meet Mrs. Lin. Her son is back. By the way, her son has been abroad before and just came back recently. He's now working as a CEO of a foreign company. I've seen him. He looks talented, and his conditions are not bad. Mrs. Lin said that her son is not married yet. I wanted to ask you if you want to pick a time to meet him. Su Peijian looked at Xiang Kaiping. She didn't expect that she would go around in circles to ask her to go on a blind date. Mom, there are a lot of things to do at the company now. I'm afraid I'm not in the mood. Child, I'm not asking you to get married right away. You should at least get in touch with him. Xiang Kaiping knew that her daughter used to have a fiancé and that she used to be with someone from the Huo family. However, she really didn't want Su Peijian to have anything to do with the Huo family. If the two sisters married into the same family, she was really afraid that they would dislike each other again. It wouldn't be good if there was discord. Su Peijian saw the flash of worry in Xiang Caiping's eyes and finally nodded. Okay, it's not a big deal to make 1 or 2 more friends. However, I think you probably didn't make it clear to them, Mom. What did I say? I mean, next time someone wants to introduce me to someone, please tell them that I was released from prison after serving 2 years. Only 1 sentence. Xiang Caiping's expression changed. She looked at Su Peijian in a daze. Her lips trembled, and her eyes slowly became misty. Peijian, that matter is in the past. Let's not talk about it, okay? Mom, don't be naive. Su Peijian smiled. It was such a big news that I went to prison. I don't believe that people can't find out. I don't want to waste everyone's time. It's better to make some things clear in advance. Xiang Kaiping naturally understood. However, no matter what her daughter had done wrong, she was still her daughter. Moreover, this daughter had changed. She was so obedient and good. She didn't want her daughter to grow old alone. Peijian, you still blame me, right? Blame me for not protecting you. If she had begged Su Qingsang to let Su Peijian go, she wouldn't have been in prison. Mom. Seeing that Xiang Kaiping was here again, Su Peijian felt really tired. I don't blame you. I'm just telling the truth. After all, the past has already happened. There's no way to change it. I was in prison. I made mistakes too. I don't think there's anything to hide. If the other party can't accept it and you don't make it clear to them, they might think that I'm lying if they really fall in love with me in the future. That would be so boring. But. Xiang Kaiping didn't finish her sentence. How much evil was there toward women in this world? How could she not know that? That was the prejudice of the world. Even if Su Peijian didn't do anything, in the eyes of those people, her past would be a stain. No buts. Su Peijian didn't want to discuss this with Xiang Kaiping anymore. In this aspect, her understanding of Xiang Kaiping was different. What has already happened, no matter what, has already happened. Mom, I won't run away, and I won't feel guilty. If I can get over it, I hope you can too, Mom. It's not a big deal. Her attitude was calm, but Xiang Kaiping was influenced by traditional thinking. She really couldn't be as open-minded as her daughter. Peijian, I'm sorry. Su Peijian really had a headache. She didn't know how Su Qingsang used to put up with Xiang Kaiping. Sometimes, she really had the urge to ask Su Qingsang. With Xiang Caiping's twisted brain circuit, how did Su Qingsang manage to be close to her mother and her daughter? Mom, I'll say it again. You didn't do me wrong. You didn't do anyone wrong. I'm fine now, really fine. You don't have to worry about me. As for marriage, if you think that the man is suitable, I can meet him. But I just want to make things clear in advance to avoid misunderstandings in the future. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. I've been really busy recently. And I don't think that women have to get married. So, Mom, you don't have to blame yourself, don't feel guilty, and don't worry about me. Is that okay? For Su Peijian, this was already her rare patience. If Xiang Kaiping still couldn't accept it, she could only go home less. After all, she really didn't feel sorry for herself, and she really didn't need Xiang Caiping's guilt. In her eyes, these emotions were useless. After getting Xiang Caiping's answer, even though she knew that she couldn't change Xiang Caiping's view in a short time, Su Peijian still felt more or less relieved. She turned and went upstairs to take a shower. As for Ling Jing, who she had left in Rongyuan condominium. Sorry, Su Peijian had forgotten about her again. Su Peijian started to get busy. The company was going to build a new warehouse system, logistics system, and online shopping platform. She hired someone to redesign the company's website. The company used to have a website, but the page was old and slow. Su Peijian wouldn't allow that to happen. Not only did she hire someone, but she also specially posted a recruitment advertisement, looking for talents in this area. Also, the Lunar New Year was coming, and some of the company's celebration activities were about to start. She was very busy. In addition to the department store, she also had to make her tens of millions of assets more useful. Recently, the futures prices had fluctuated a lot. Su Peijian was born to be good at business. After talking with her financial advisor, she insisted on her judgment. To her, doing business was sometimes a big gamble. Her boldness made her financial advisor's heart tremble. But he couldn't help but admire her foresight. It was a happy thing to see the wealth under one's name increase exponentially. It wasn't until the next time her period came and left that Su Peijian finally remembered. She spent money on a pretty boy, and she hadn't seen him for a long time. Thinking of the last time they had sex, it wasn't a bad feeling. Recalling the feeling of her body at that time, she finally decided to go back and have sex with her pet. At this time, it had been nearly half a month since she had sex with Ling Jing. Chapter 822. Ling Jing had been raised by others since he was a child. He was the youngest son of the Ling family. He had been loved and indulged by all parties since he was born. It was true that the power of the Ling family was complicated, but because of his outstanding performance, he had attracted special attention since he was a child. Who in the entire Ling family didn't support him? From the eldest young master to the fifth young master, even if those brothers didn't like him, so what? They still had to support him. That damned woman, after having sex with him, didn't put on a shy expression. Not only did she sink because of his skills, but she also never appeared again. In half a month, he left and came back. That woman didn't even call, not to mention appearing. If he hadn't asked someone to investigate the information showing that Sue Payson had been busy with work during this time, he would have suspected that she had other gigolos besides him. Realizing that he actually compared her with a gigolo, Ling Jing was not feeling well. He stood up from the living room. Forget it, that damned woman, he would teach her a lesson later. He didn't want to play anymore. He had more important things to do. As soon as Ling Jing thought this, he heard the sound of the door opening. Sue Payson entered the door. She had an appointment with a business partner tonight. She was wearing a black suit and her long hair was tied behind her head. If other women were to wear this outfit, they would look old-fashioned. However, Sue Payson was beautiful and beautiful. The black dress accentuated her slim figure and made her look strangely sexy. She was also holding a woolen coat in her hand. When she entered the door, she put the coat at the entrance. She changed her shoes and entered the door. From beginning to end, she didn't look at Ling Jing. Ling Jing felt uncomfortable again. He saw that Sue Payson was about to enter the door and stood in front of her. His slender and strong arms easily blocked her way. Sue Payson looked at him expressionlessly, as if silently asking him what he wanted to do. Ling Jing felt that her tooth sockets were beginning to throb in pain. He looked at the face in front of him. She was beautiful, but also ruthless. He thought of his feelings when he saw the thick stack of information. At first, he thought that it was no wonder that this woman had a bad temper. She was the daughter of the Sue family, who was loved by her parents. The Lee family was considered one of the top families in Lin City. A young miss raised by such a family was indeed arrogant. But when he looked at the back, he realized something was wrong. The identity of a rich young lady was fake, but the identity of an illegitimate daughter was real. Ling Jing thinks of her family's unreliable old man. If he had done the same thing in the past, he would probably have nothing to do with him now. With a sudden change in identity and a fall from the clouds, it wasn't hard to imagine what would happen next. Unable to accept the change in her identity, the woman did many hurtful things. However, from Ling Jing's point of view, Sue Payson was hopelessly stupid. If the weeds are not removed by the roots, they will grow again when the spring breeze blows. If she really wanted to deal with her half-sister, she could just kill her and be done with it. How could there be so many troubles in the future? However, he thought of Hua Jinyao. Even Ling Jing had to admit it. Hua Jinyao had contributed a lot to the Hua family's success. When the old man mentioned Hua Jinyao, he was full of praise. At that time, he thought that the old man wanted Hua Jinyao to be his son. Of course, praising Hua Jinyao was one thing. He paid attention to Hua Jinyao not only because he was the president of the Tianyu group, but also because the Hua family's network was not inferior to the Ling family's. Last time, that uncle of his had caused the old man to suffer quite a lot of losses. In that case, Hua Jinyao and the Hua family could be considered the Ling family's enemy. Sue Payson courted death and got herself into prison. The crime was ridiculous. Stealing trade secrets. As for what Sue Payson had done before, it was not worth mentioning to someone like Ling Jing. Was this woman bad? Bad. But not bad enough. No. Even if she wasn't ruthless, she was still ruthless. Her ferociousness was now directed at him. Looking at her eyes, they were as calm as a pool of stagnant water. He couldn't find any emotional reaction in them. She was really calm. He thought of the last time she said that she had just come out of prison. He thought that she was trying to be ruthless, but he didn't expect it to be true. Woman, what's the matter? Su Peijian caught the flash of anger on Ling Jing's face. She frowned in confusion. As if she had thought of something, she suddenly nodded with a look of understanding. I'll transfer the money to you later. Is 500,000 enough? Recently, her investment had been good, so she didn't mind spending this small amount of money. Ling Jing's expression changed again. He looked at the woman in front of him and tried his best to resist the urge to strangle her. Do you think I'm doing this for money? Otherwise? Su Peijian raised her eyebrows and looked at the man in front of her without a trace of emotion. I'll transfer the money to you. Now get out of the way. After saying this, she passed him and continued back to the room. A hand appeared on her waist, and her body was turned around. Ling Jing was so angry that he laughed. He curled his lips and hooked her chin with one hand. His eyes were light. So generous. 1 million before, and now 500,000. If I don't work hard, wouldn't I be sorry for the money you paid? Su Peijian didn't like this kind of unforeseen intimacy. She calmly waved his hand away. If you think money is too easy to earn, you can be more obedient. I don't mind giving you more. He wanted to push Ling Jing away. The man's anger had not subsided. He lowered his head and wanted to gag her like last time. Su Peijian seemed to be aware of his actions, and her expression changed slightly. When Ling Jing's head approached her, she lifted her foot and stomped on his foot forcefully. At the same time, she reached out and pushed him away. Ling Jing was caught off guard and was actually pushed away by her. Not only was he pushed away, but the pain in his foot also made him take 2 steps back. Su Peijian stood up straight, straightened her clothes, and looked at the man in front of her with displeasure. Didn't I make the rules clear enough last time? Recognize your identity. Recognize my identity. You. Ling Jing looked at the woman in front of him and almost blurted out, Do you know who I am? Su Peijian didn't have time to pay attention to Ling Jing's psychological activities. That wasn't necessary. Before entering the room, she glanced at her. Go take a shower, brush your teeth, and clean yourself up. Come over later. Her tone of command didn't carry much emotion. She had indeed been very busy and tired recently. She needed such a love affair to vent and also to satisfy herself. The door of the room opened and closed. Ling Jing's face turned pale and green. Damn this woman. She really treated him like a duck. He stood in the corridor, and for a moment, he wanted to turn around and leave. After staring at the closed door for a long time, Ling Jing suddenly smiled. Okay. Clean up, right? No problem. Do it with her, right? No problem either. If he didn't make this woman beg for mercy this time, wouldn't he be letting down his reputation? Even if Su Peijian wanted to have sex with Ling Jing, she was very calm. She went to the bathroom to take a bath and drip essential oil. She closed her eyes and enjoyed the relaxation in front of her. She liked this time of day. In fact, it was too tiring in the company, and it was even more tiring in front of Xiang Kaiping. She never thought that one day, her place to relax would be such a small apartment. However, she glanced around the bathroom. Now that she looked at it, the apartment was indeed a little small. Maybe she should go to the neighborhood to see if there were any suitable buildings. Buy a duplex. Get someone to pay attention tomorrow. If there was no duplex, she could buy an entire floor. Although Su Peijian was taking a bath, her thoughts never stopped. The matter of the company, the investment, the matter of buying a house. In just a few minutes, she had gone through it all. She had sorted it out and relaxed. She got up from the bathtub and casually wiped the water stains on her body. She put on a bathrobe and left the bathroom. When she went out, she was not surprised to see Ling Jing lying on her bed. The man wasn't wearing anything and only managed to cover the area below his waist with the quilt. The color of the scar on his strong chest seemed to have faded a little. However, it did add a bit of a different kind of sex appeal. In terms of external conditions, this man was indeed considered excellent. Su Peijian only took a glance and then looked away. She walked to the dressing table and sat down, starting to do basic maintenance. During the 2 years in prison, because of the labor, her hands had a thin layer of calluses. After coming out, she went to the beauty salon to get a card and spent some time to restore her skin to the delicate state it was before she went to prison. Since she was a teenager, Li Qinxue had used all kinds of expensive skin care products to maintain her skin. After forming a habit, it was difficult to change. After finishing the facial care, she began to apply moisturizer to her whole body. Ling Jing had been waiting for the woman to see his body and couldn't wait to pounce on him. He had already thought about it before he entered the door. Today, he had to make that woman give in. So he was waiting for that woman to pounce on him, waiting for that woman to want to. He wouldn't give her any reaction, to let that woman know that he was not her pet. He had to let this woman understand that he also had a temper. Unexpectedly, after taking a look at him, the woman ignored him. Watching that woman methodically apply skin care products, he had never seen a woman do such a thing in front of him. He was so shocked that he forgot to look away for a moment. He hated women who put a lot of things on their faces and put on thick makeup every time they went out. Although those women never dared to let him wait. Su Peijian was the first. He watched as she gently patted her face and applied the skin care products bit by bit. It would have been fine if it was just her face. But that woman actually wanted to apply it to her body. She was only wearing a bathrobe, and there was nothing under it. Ling Jing watched as the woman hit and hammered his wounds with her slender hands, which were extremely ruthless in front of him. She caressed her own arms, shoulders, heart, and then her thighs and calves. Ling Jing's throat was a little tight. The memories from half a month ago came back to him. The woman's porcelain-like skin and that perfect figure overlapped with his memories. All the feelings seemed to return at this moment. Su Peijian had finished wiping and suddenly turned around to look at Ling Jing. "Come here." Her tone was commanding, and her attitude was cold. Ling Jing subconsciously got up. When he realized his reaction, his face turned pale. He lay there without moving, with no intention of getting up at all. "I said come here." Su Peijian's brows were already slightly furrowed. "Help me wipe my back." She couldn't wipe her back. In the past, she had to go to the beauty salon to have someone care for her. Today, with Ling Jing here, it would be a waste not to use it. The woman's figure was dyed with a layer of haziness under the light. Her back was as smooth as jade, which made Ling Jing stand up for some reason. He walked behind Su Peijian. Su Peijian took his hand and squeezed some moisturizer into his hand. "Help me wipe my back." She said it again. This time, Ling Jing didn't need her to say it. He reached out and touched her back without any resistance. The touch of the memory combined with the sight in front of him. He couldn't bear to let go of her butterfly bone. Wipe it all. Su Peijian felt that he was only touching one place and frowned with some dissatisfaction. Also, be gentle. He couldn't even do such a small thing. How stupid. Ling Jing, who didn't know that he was being despised again, moved his hand down, but his eyes saw Su Peijian's body. The bathrobe had been taken off, and it was barely covering her waist. The key point was blocked, but there was a feeling of wanting to say something but not wanting to. Ling Jing's plan before entering the door had been thrown into a corner. His mind was filled with the idea of pressing this woman under his body and doing it on the spot. He thought so and did so. He picked up Su Peijian's body and kissed her lips. Su Peijian was a little dissatisfied. He hadn't finished wiping her back. She wanted him to continue, but she felt Ling Jing's hand wander around her back in a somewhat disorderly manner. He kissed her with an eagerness that wanted to swallow her breath. Su Peijian didn't like this speed. She wanted to push him away, but Ling Jing lifted her body and hung her in the air. Then, he walked to the bed in a few steps. Her body was pressed down, and her low cry was kissed by him. The bathrobe had fallen to the ground at some point. The room with the heater on wasn't cold, and it was even a little hot. The temperature rose steadily, and the smell of the man's body assaulted her face. Su Peijian gave up the idea of letting him slow down. She raised her foot and hooked it around his waist. Ling Jing's rationality completely dissipated. There was only one thought in his mind: to conquer this woman. To make her submit to him. A new round of competition began. Ling Jing, who wanted to regain his dignity, worked especially hard that night. He had never been so devoted and crazy in a relationship with a woman. There had never been a woman who could make him so out of control and unable to stop. Su Peijian was even more tired than last time. She almost couldn't get up in the morning. She raised her hand and rubbed her forehead. The soreness in her arm made her grit her teeth slightly. She turned her face and saw that Ling Jing was sleeping soundly beside her. It seemed that he was really short of money. He had worked so hard last night. Even though she didn't want it anymore, he still held her waist and refused to let go. Su Peijian narrowed her eyes. She didn't like this. Although this pet was strong, it wasn't very obedient. She got up and went to the bathroom to take care of herself. Seeing that the man was still sleeping, she had no intention of waking him up. She casually made herself breakfast. When she was about to leave, she found that Ling Jing was still sleeping. Su Peijian, who had said that she would transfer the money yesterday, thought for a moment, took out another card and put it on the bedside table, leaving a note. She turned around and went to work without looking back. When Ling Jing opened his eyes, there was a sense of satisfaction in addition to the slight fatigue in his body. It wasn't that he hadn't had other women before, but with those women, it was mostly pure physical desire. Every time he was done, he would send those women away. He didn't have the experience of sleeping with a woman, nor did he have the idea of conquering a woman. But he did that last night. He plowed on that woman again and again, wanting her to admit defeat, wanting her to beg for mercy. Unexpectedly, the woman didn't admit defeat. Instead, her reaction was even more enthusiastic than last time. She was as beautiful as a rose, but more beautiful than a rose. She was as charming as a demon, but more seductive than a demon. This woman was like a poppy, making people know that it was dangerous, but they couldn't help but want to get close to her, want to take her off. Ling Jing closed his eyes. His body hadn't pulled out of the extreme and satisfaction like last night. This was a feeling he had never felt before. Almost every part of his body was clamoring, like a traveler walking in the desert who had drunk enough water. Not only was he satisfied, but he also saved his life. Ling Jing suddenly withdrew his consciousness and sat up. At the same time that he was awake, his reason also returned. He successfully remembered his plan from yesterday at this moment. He wanted to provoke that woman's interest, not let her be satisfied, and then make her beg him. But what happened after that? Not only did he not succeed in making that woman beg for mercy, but he was also addicted to it. Ling Jing's expression was very ugly for a moment. He couldn't understand how things could be so out of control. He got up and wanted to find that woman, wanting to get back at her. But from the corner of his eye, he saw the card that reflected the golden light on the bedside table. It was a super VIP card issued by a certain bank. Needless to say, this was left for him by that woman. In addition to this card, there was also a note under the card. There were only 2 lines written on it. Go buy a mobile phone and save my number. The next time I come over, I will call to inform you. Next to it was a string of numbers. Needless to say, this was that woman's number. Ling Jing looked at the note and pinched the fingertips of the card. Blue veins popped out, and he used so much force that he almost broke the card. Good, really very good. This damn woman. She really treated him like a duck. Not only did she send him off with money, but she also treated him as a pet that came and went at her beck and call. What did she mean by calling when she was coming? What did this mean? Let him wait here for her to come. Damn woman. It was really too damn. Ling Jing didn't need to get up now. He could completely guess that the woman was not here at all. He kept panting, there was a nameless fire in his heart, but there was nowhere to vent it. Just as he was trying his best not to find that woman and beat her up, the watch on his wrist rang. What's the matter? Ling Jing's tone was not very good. He had a gloomy face. If there were any subordinates at this time, they would definitely be affected by the anger emanating from his body. Gu Xiao on the other end of the phone was shocked by Ling Jing's tone, and his voice was a little more careful. Young master. Shen Jing has been caught. Ling Jing's face changed, and he got up from the bed. The gold card was thrown back to the bedside table. Ling Yan got up, quickly put on his clothes and left. Chapter 823. The place Ling Jing went to was not the Ling family's house. It was a villa under his name. The high-rise living room was spacious and bright. The suffocating feeling of living in that small shabby apartment for a few days was gone. That damned woman. Why didn't he go back and see what would happen to her? She might be angry if she couldn't find him. Thinking of this, he felt much better. However, this comfort didn't last long. Gu Xiao and a few of his men brought Shen Jing in. The moment he saw Shen Jing, Ling Jing's face changed. He was injured that day because of Shen Jing. Shen Jing had been with him for 3 years. He had been doing some unimportant work before. Later, he discovered Shen Jing's ability and promoted him. Shen Jing was resourceful and resourceful. He had a kind of ruthlessness and drive that didn't lose to Gu Xiao. Ling Jing was very satisfied with him. He even joked that his name was Jing, and his name was Jing. It sounded very similar. However, such a subordinate, who he thought highly of, actually stabbed him when he was attacked. When the knife was waved at him, Ling Jing didn't have time to react. Facing the betrayal of someone he trusted, it didn't feel good. Shen Jing looked to be in a rather sorry state. He hurt Ling Jing. How could Ling Jing's men let him go? Each of them punched him, which was enough to make him suffer. During this period, Shen Jing had a very bad time. His face was bruised and blood-stained. His hair was messy and his eyes were bloodshot. He was dragged over with his hands and feet tied and knelt in front of Ling Jing. Ling Jing sat on the sofa, looking relaxed. However, the moment Shen Jing knelt down, he raised his foot and kicked him without thinking. The kick hit Shen Jing's chest. Shen Jing's body flew out, his back hit the coffee table behind him, and then fell to the side. Ling Jing stood up. At this moment, his face was full of anger. He didn't look like a rascal in front of Su Peijian. He raised his foot and stepped on Shen Jing's chest. His eyes were malicious. Tell me, who ordered you to do this? Shen Jing almost vomited blood after being kicked by Ling Jing. At this moment, he had some difficulty breathing and couldn't breathe. Looking up at Ling Jing, he suddenly smiled. I won't say it. Just give up. Ling Jing was not surprised. The tip of his foot exerted force again, and the expression on his face changed again as he looked at Shinjing. His voice was cold. When you first came to me, you told me that you were an orphan. That's why you're not afraid of death. Shinjing didn't speak, but looked at Ling Jing with a twisted face. I've been with you for 3 years, and I know that you're indeed not afraid of death. Therefore, there are many things that I'm very reassured to let you do. Shinjing's face turned pale. He was in so much pain that he was about to close his eyes. Ling Jing lifted her foot at this time and exerted force. Shinjing clearly heard the sound of his ribs breaking. You really aren't afraid of death, and I believe that you won't say anything. But tell me, if I bring Shinlefyu to me, I won't be able to help you. Is she afraid of death? Shinjing's eyes widened. He almost thought there was something wrong with his ears. No, that's impossible. Impossible. Young master wouldn't know, no one would know. What's impossible? I wouldn't know that you have a sister. Do you think I wouldn't hurt her? Shinjing suddenly reacted. He kept twisting his body and looked at Ling Jing. Because the pain of his broken ribs had completely twisted his face. Young master, this is what I did alone. It has nothing to do with Lefyu. Let her go, it's too late. Ling Jing retracted his foot and took a step back. He looked coldly at the person in front of him. Prepare to see what happens to your sister. After saying this, he glanced at Gu Xiu. Gu Xiu understood and gestured for the others to take Shinjing away. Shinjing couldn't move his hands and feet. When he was grabbed, he kept struggling. Young master, I was wrong. Young master, I beg you. I'm begging you. That's why I did it all by myself. It has nothing to do with my sister. Ling Jing didn't speak. He directly dragged him out. Shinjing shouted, Young master, I'll talk, I'll tell you who ordered me to do this. I beg you, I'll tell you everything. Please let my sister go. Ling Jing's fingertips moved, and the two subordinates stopped. Ling Jing walked in front of Shinjing and looked down at him in a sorry state. Young master, I'll talk. When Shinjing spat out the name, Ling Jing expressionlessly turned his face to the side. Ling Jing didn't say anything, waiting for his sentence. Ling Jing saw the expectation in his eyes and waved his hand. Take him away and let someone treat his injury. Young master. Gu Xiu didn't understand. Ling Jing suddenly smiled. That smile made people shudder. If his injury is not good, how can he see with his own eyes that his sister pays the price for what she did? Young master, this time, it was Shinjing's turn to scream. He still wanted to speak, but Ling Jing had lost his patience. After Shinjing was taken away, Gu Xiu looked at Ling Jing worriedly. Young master, do you believe what Shinjing said just now? I don't. Ling Jing hooked his lips, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I don't believe a word he said. Then, but that doesn't mean that person is not suspicious. Ling Jing narrowed her eyes and the light in her eyes was very dangerous, so the best way is to invite our Miss Shin to come over as a guest and let her good brother, our traitor, have a good look at how we entertain his most beloved little sister. Yes. Gu Xiu felt a little cold on his back. Young master was like this to traitors. He would never show mercy. Young master, now that you've shown up, do you want to go back to my house? No. Ling Jing didn't plan to go back. He got up and was about to go upstairs to the study, but he seemed to think of something and stopped. Right. Have someone keep an eye on Rong Yuan. Keep an eye on Rong Yuan. If that woman comes back, let me know. He would never take the initiative to contact that woman, but he must win back the city in front of that woman and let her know how powerful he was. Since that was the case, he naturally had to have someone keep an eye on her to see when she would come home. Ling Jing took it for granted. Gu Xiu watched Ling Jing go upstairs and suddenly felt that young master's behavior was wrong. Wasn't it normal for that woman to come home? Young master still had someone to keep an eye on her and inform him as soon as she came home. What was young master trying to do? If he really wanted to see that woman, couldn't he just bring her here? Gu Xiu, who couldn't stop his imagination, suddenly realized that he might have discovered something extraordinary. I can't say. Su Peijian was a person of action. Since she had decided to buy a house, she naturally moved very quickly. In 3 days, she found a good apartment near the company. It was a very high-end neighborhood. It was said that some celebrities also lived here, and there was a duplex on the top floor. The area was very large, equivalent to a small villa. Someone had booked it before, but later bought a villa. Because the area was relatively large, it had never been sold. To Su Peijian's satisfaction, there was a balcony on the top floor. Of course, the price was not cheap, but Su Peijian felt that as long as she liked it, the price didn't matter. The house was not decorated, so she hired a design company to design it and set the decoration plan, including how to design the balcony to feel like a garden. There were also some small requirements of her. Previously, Xiang Caiping's villa was designed according to Xiang Caiping's preferences. Although her taste was not bad, it was really not Su Peijian's aesthetic. She did not hide the fact that she was buying a house from Xiang Caiping. Instead, she told her openly. She also told Xiang Caiping that after the decoration was done, she could move in with her. Although the environment here was good, it was indeed a little far from the city, and it was not convenient to go to work. Xiang Caiping was happy now that her daughter was happy, so naturally, she could not have any objections. Su Peijian's online shopping and logistics operation had already begun, and it was also the end of the year, so she was very busy. Although the department store that Xiang Caiping left her was of an average size, some downstream manufacturers and partners had to have a good relationship. It was now the end of the year, and many manufacturers and partners had sent her invitations to attend the other party's annual meeting. Although it was not as exaggerated as the Tianyu groups, she also felt tired after a few social engagements. Su Peijian did not go to all of them, but chose a few more important partners to attend their annual meetings. The company's affairs, the renovation, and a bunch of things at the end of the year were crowded together, and Su Peijian could not remember to go to Rome Garden to find Ling Jing. Until one day, when she came out of the hotel, Su Peijian drank a little and could not drive by herself. She suddenly remembered that this place was very close to Rome Garden. Why don't I just walk back? It was December, and the wind outside was very strong, making people feel uncomfortable. Su Peijian frowned and calculated the distance. It would take about 10 minutes to walk. Forget it. She was too lazy to take a taxi. Walking would be a way to sober up. When passing by a shop that sold mobile phones, Su Peijian suddenly thought of a problem. Her pet did not seem to have sent her his number, nor did he call her. That man had bought a car that cost 700,000 or 800,000 yuan, and he wore clothes that cost tens of thousands of yuan without a frown. Why didn't he buy a mobile phone? Su Peijian thought that she had seen through the truth and sneered. She entered the mobile phone shop and picked out the latest model for Ling Jing. The brand was very powerful in all aspects. Not only did she buy a mobile phone, but she also got a card for him. Then, she saved her number in the phone. Carrying the bag out of the shop, Su Peijian thought of using the phone as a gift to make that man behave better today. After all, she had been very tired in the past few days. When she walked back to Rome Garden, it was already 10 o'clock at night. She did not see Ling Jing in the house. For a moment, her expression was a little ugly. In her opinion, she had paid, and Ling Jing had contributed. They were taking what they needed. It was best for Ling Jing to be obedient, cooperative, and easy to control. Chapter 8:24. As for Ling Jing. After taking 1.5 million from her, Su Peijian believed that the other party would have a bigger appetite. He might not be here today, but he'll be back in a few days. She took a bath and relaxed herself completely. Then, she applied her skincare routine and went straight to bed. However, before falling asleep, Su Peijian glanced at the bed. Xiao Zhao didn't change the bed sheets every day. The sheets on the bed were newly changed and there was not a single trace of it. She sat down and looked down. There was no scent on the sheets. Ling Jing. Did that man really run away? Su Peijian hadn't received any consumer information in the past few days. There was no reason for that man to take a 500,000 yuan card and not spend a single cent. What about him? She narrowed her eyes and suddenly thought of something. It was true that the man did not spend her money, but it did not mean that he did not spend other women's money. Su Peijian suddenly had a bad feeling. At that time, he only wanted to relax and forgot about one thing. Feeling a little uncomfortable, she called Zhou Mei. Su Peijian gritted her teeth and forced herself to endure the discomfort. Then, she closed her eyes and went to sleep. On the other side, Ling Jing had already asked someone to bring Shen Jing's younger sister, Shen Lefu. Shen Lefu had a baby face and looked much younger than her actual age. I heard that he had just graduated from university this year. 1,000 ways to deal with Shen Lefu flashed through Ling Jing's mind, but at this time, Gu Xiu entered the door. Young master. Miss Su has returned to Rome Garden. Ling Jing froze for a moment and didn't remember who Miss Su was for a second. He had always referred to Su Peijian as that woman. Now that Gu Xiu mentioned it, he had almost forgotten that the woman's name was Su Peijian. Thinking of what that woman had done to him, there was some gloominess in his heart that could not be dispersed. He coldly glanced at Gu Xiu. Does it have anything to do with me? Who told you to tell me this? Get out. Gu Xiu had an inexplicable look on his face. Thinking about Shen Jing's broken ribs, he quickly left. He left, but Ling Jing couldn't calm down. That woman went home. If they didn't see him, would they think that he ran away with the money? As the young master of the Ling family, how could he run away with the money? He absolutely could not let that woman have such thoughts. Moreover, he wanted to teach that woman a lesson. Thinking of this, Ling Jing seemed to have found a way out. He was right. He would teach that woman a lesson right now. When Su Peijian was half asleep, she felt someone lying on top of her. She frowned uncomfortably. When the pressure became even heavier, she instinctively lifted her leg and gave it a hard kick. There seemed to be a low cry in his ears, and then there was a bang. That voice woke her up, and she opened her eyes to look at the person in front of her. No one knew when Ling Jing had arrived. She was sitting on the ground with a pained and shocked expression on her face. Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian. She really didn't expect that Su Peijian could still be so strong even when she was asleep. You. Woman, what are you made of? Previously, they had slept with each other's necks intertwined, and their passion was like fire. Why was she kicking him as she pleased the moment she turned around? Su Peijian didn't sleep very well, but she hated it when people touched her. During her 2 years in prison, 1 or 2 of her cellmates saw that she was pretty and wanted to bully her. She had punched him back with her fist. What's the big deal about kicking Ling Jing? Su Peijian couldn't sleep anymore. She sat up and looked at Ling Jing, who was sitting on the floor. He was wearing an Armani Prive suit jacket. Although he was sitting on the floor, the Prive's custom-made suit jacket made him look more casual. He sat there and looked at her with raised eyebrows. His almond-shaped eyes were unusually seductive. Su-Peijian wasn't in the mood to appreciate it. "What are you doing in the middle of the night?" Ling Jing looked at Su-Peijian and was inexplicably speechless. He had come back to teach Su-Peijian a lesson. He thought that the woman must be tossing and turning without him around and couldn't sleep well. Who knew that when he entered the door, he would see the woman sleeping soundly. She seemed to be sleeping a little hot, and the blanket had slid down a lot. Her crimson silk nightgown with spaghetti straps had fallen off because of her movements. Most of her shoulders were exposed. The woman didn't feel it at all. Her black hair was scattered, and her small face and skin were as white as snow. Ling Jing had seen many women, but he had to admit, this Su-Peijian was really good-looking. A little more was too much, and a little less was too little. She was sleeping, and he should have let her sleep. But looking at the situation in front of him, he remembered his purpose for coming. To teach this woman a lesson. Since she wanted to teach her a lesson, she even asked if she was sleeping. He didn't expect that before he could do anything, Su-Peijian would kick him. He, the dignified young master of the Ling family, Ling Jing, who had no problem fighting against 10 people alone. But he was kicked out of bed by a woman. If this matter were to spread, how could he save his face? Ling Jing couldn't answer, but Su-Peijian didn't have much patience. She looked at the clothes on his body and scolded him with a cold face. "Get out." Ling Jing stood up and approached Su-Peijian. His voice carried anger that he didn't even notice. "Why are you going out? We haven't seen each other for a few days. Don't you miss me?" Su-Peijian looked at him and thought of her previous plan. Her face darkened. "I said get out. I won't." Ling Jing was angry. He moved in front of Su-Peijian and lowered his head to kiss her. Su-Peijian took out the self-defense skill she had learned. She hooked her hands around Ling Jing's neck and pulled him. Ling Jing was caught off guard. He thought that she was going to hug him, but he was pressed on the bed and the woman's hands were strangling his neck. "I'll say it again. If you want more from me, be obedient. Now, get out. I don't want to see you." He pulled her hands away and was about to fight back, but Su-Peijian's next words made him stop. "I've arranged a medical examination for you tomorrow. Before I get your health report, stay away from me." Ling Jing took a few seconds to digest Su-Peijian's words. He suddenly stood up and stared at the damn woman in front of him in shock. What do you mean?" "Nothing." Su-Peijian put her sling back to its original position and calmly straightened the quilt. She looked at him as if she was looking at an object. "I was careless before. Who knows if you have any hidden diseases? Who knows how many women you've had sex with?" Especially when she didn't intend to keep an eye on him all the time. She wasn't in the mood to keep an eye on him, but she could make her own requests. Su-Peijian, Ling Jing's face turned green, but Su-Peijian didn't feel it at all. In fact, Ling Jing was the object she bought. Even if her words were direct and unpleasant. So what? Chapter 825. To put it bluntly, in Su-Peijian's heart, Ling Jing's role was similar to that of a toy. She didn't mind keeping such a person, but before that, she had to ensure her own safety. Also, next time when you do it, please wear a t-shirt. Her eyes were full of disdain, and her tone was emotionless. Ling Jing felt that he would be angered to death by this woman sooner or later. Seeing that Su-Peijian seemed to be planning to go back to sleep, he pressed his body against hers without thinking. "Wear a t-shirt." Ling Jing's face was gloomy as he put his hands on her sides. "Won't you lose a lot of fun that way?" After all, with that extra layer, the feeling will be much worse. He touched the woman's smooth and delicate face, which made him want to pinch it. Get off. I won't. As Ling Jing spoke, he tugged at her suspenders. Not only will I not leave, but I will also do it. I won't go for a checkup. I won't wear it. What can you do to me? His tone was rascally, and his attitude was shameless. If anyone who was related to the Ling family or knew Ling Jing saw this scene, their eyeballs would probably fall out of their sockets. Su Peijian didn't like the rascal in front of her. Ling Jing was probably wrong about one thing. He was indeed good at his looks. But so what? You don't want the money. Get off. Money? It would have been better if she hadn't mentioned money. As soon as she mentioned money, Ling Jing became more and more angry. He pressed on top of her and put one hand on her waist. I want you more now. Lowering his head, he tugged at her suspenders again. It was a crimson silk nightgown, and her skin was as white as snow. Ling Jing's breathing was a little heavy. Su Peijian stared at his face. Men had a natural advantage in terms of body shape. If he forced himself on her, she really couldn't resist. If she couldn't resist, she had other ways. She put her hand on his chest, and her expression was very cold. Ling Jing. This was the first time Su Peijian called his name. I said, since you acquiesced in our relationship, then you have to follow my rules. If you can't follow my rules, her clear voice paused at this moment, and she pointed at Ling Jing's chest. You know, I don't have to have you. With this condition, I can find a lot of men who are better than your looks. Understand? With her current status, it was not impossible for her to find a small celebrity to play with. He was not her only choice. Ling Jing looked into Su Peijian's eyes and knew that this woman was telling the truth. If he really couldn't satisfy her, she would really dare to replace him. She went to find another man. Ling Jing's tooth socket is a little sour, damn woman. Not only was he ruthless, he was also merciless. People say that a day as husband and wife means 100 days of love. After all, they had slept for 2 nights. But this woman, she didn't feel any gratitude at all. When Su Peijian saw that he didn't speak, she seemed to be sure that he had understood. She turned over and wanted to go back to sleep. Ling Jing, who was furious, didn't care about anything else. No matter what, he must teach Su Peijian a lesson today. He lowered his head and kissed her lips forcefully. He gave up all his technique, all his gentleness. All he had was the most primal impulse, the desire to conquer the female that had not evolved even after thousands and tens of thousands of years. He nibbled on her lips with great force. Another man. A muffled voice sounded between her lips. His hand easily tore her thin nightdress. Are you sure? He unceremoniously captured her softness, and his voice was evil and arrogant. Are you sure they can satisfy you like I do? Su Peijian glared at him, as if she didn't expect Ling Jing to dare to do such a thing to her. Ling Jing, you'd better leave now. Leave. Ling Jing exerted force in his hand. Are you sure? Aren't you being sarcastic? Are you sure you don't want me to continue now? The two of them only spent 2 nights together. But those 2 nights were already better than many nights. He knew her weaknesses and where her sensitive spots were. He wasn't really a young boy without any experience. To deal with Su Peijian, a casual move was enough. He thought about it very well, and that was what he did. At first, Su Peijian wanted to resist, but then she thought of something and suddenly stopped moving. Only when Ling Jing's hand pulled the last piece of her nightdress away, he spoke in an extremely cold voice. According to the provisions of Article 236 of the Criminal Law, Forced sex with a woman will be sentenced to more than 3 years and less than 10 years in prison. As she spoke, she took the phone on the bedside table into the palm of her hand. She swiped the screen and said, "Do you want to try it too? How does it feel to be in prison?" Ling Jing was very disappointed by her reaction, but he was unwilling to admit defeat just like that. He supported his body with one hand and grabbed the phone from her fingertips with the other. The process was very smooth. "Woman, do you want me to remind you? You gave me money to support me. If something really happened, it wouldn't be called rape, it would be called rape." "Really?" Su Peijian let him take the phone away. "Do you want to try it?" Her gorgeous eyes were extremely cold, without a trace of emotion in them. Ling Jing was completely lost now. Su Peijian didn't care about what he thought. She pushed him away with force and lay down on the side. "Remember to close the door for me." Ling Jing gritted his teeth and stared at Su Peijian's face for a long time. Finally, he got out of bed. However, he didn't go out. He went to the bathroom to take a shower. Su Peijian didn't have time to pay attention to him. Not long after, the man came back again, covered in water vapor. Regardless of Su Peijian's reaction, he directly put his arms around her waist. Before Su Peijian could speak, he pulled her into his arms. "Woman, if you keep making noise, I don't care about rape or not. I'll just do you directly." It seemed that this pet really needed to be replaced. It was too disobedient. "I'm tired. Go to sleep." Ling Jing acted shamelessly. He had lost again and again, so he had to regain some face. He didn't want to leave. He closed his eyes and looked as if he had already fallen asleep. Su Peijian was very not used to sleeping in such a position. She stared at the man's face for a long time and decided in her heart to kick this man out tomorrow. At present, the man didn't make any further moves, and she didn't want to continue arguing on such a meaningless matter. She closed her eyes and slept. As for Ling Jing, she would just pretend that she had a dog sleeping next to her. When Su Peijian woke up the next day, she was still thinking about how to kick Ling Jing out. Passing by the living room, Su Peijian saw the phone she had brought back yesterday and thought for a moment. Forget it, it would be troublesome to replace him. She would make things clear with Ling Jing later. At least she had to let him understand her rules. If he could abide by them, she would keep him. If not, she would kick him out. However, before Ling Jing wakes up, she receives a call from the company first so that she can make things clear to Ling Jing. When a warehouse manager was moving things, he didn't pay attention to the order in which they were stacked. As a result, the goods on top fell and hit his head. Now he was sent to the hospital. It was almost the new year, and suddenly such a thing happened. As the boss of the company, Su Peijian had to go and take a look. The man was seriously injured. He had a concussion and internal bleeding. When Su Peijian arrived, he had already been pushed into surgery. The people who sent the man were also colleagues from the company. Su Peijian comforted them and asked them to go home first. She said that the company would definitely pay for the employees' medical expenses and follow-up treatment. After comforting the people in the company, she called Zhou Mei and asked her to find someone to find out why the accident happened. Was it purely an accident or something else? As soon as she hung up the phone, the police arrived. It turned out that when the accident happened, someone called the police, and the police came to investigate as usual. As Su Peijian was a person with a criminal record, the police paid special attention to her. Su Peijian didn't care about the look in the police's eyes and told them what she knew. As for the rest, she would let the police investigate it themselves. It was already afternoon by the time she was busy. She didn't even have lunch. It wasn't until the news came from the hospital that the man's surgery was successful and his life was temporarily out of danger that she was more or less relieved. The company's annual meeting was scheduled for 3 days later. For a moment, everyone was worried that the company would cancel the annual meeting after such an incident. Su Peijian told Zhou Mei to inform the staff that the annual meeting would continue. Moreover, in order to reassure people, the original set of prizes were doubled. Su Peijian handled these matters quickly. She took care of everything that could be handled by herself. She also told people not to tell Xiang Kaiping, otherwise, she would worry again. She was busy until night, and somehow, Xiang Kaiping still found out. Su Peijian had to go back to the villa and explain the matter to Xiang Kaiping. It was indeed because the workers were careless. The police also checked the surveillance footage. It proved that it was an accident. She had already taken care of the aftermath. The injured person was actually her responsibility, but in order not to be criticized, Su Peijian told the victim's family that she was willing to pay for the medical expenses and wouldn't hold the victim responsible. That was the end of the matter. Xiang Kaiping looked at her with gratification in her eyes. Peijian is really capable. Su Peijian didn't know how to respond. She had encountered all kinds of business crises when she was learning from Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui. This was something that couldn't be any more trivial. However, seeing Xiang Caiping's affirmative look, she actually felt that it was a good feeling. It was a rare moment of relaxation. The next day was the weekend, so Su Peijian promised Xiang Kaiping to go shopping with her the next day. In fact, if it had been her, she would have bought it online or called someone to deliver it. However, Xiang Kaiping felt that it would be more festive if she went shopping. Su Peijian couldn't bear to disappoint her, and it was indeed the new year, so she could only spend 2 days with her. Seeing the smile on Xiang Caiping's face, Su Peijian felt that it would be good if she could stay like this. 2 days later, Su Peijian received a call from the hospital. Only then did she remember that she had made an appointment for a physical examination. When she made the appointment, she had made an appointment with 2 people. The other one was naturally Ling Jing. Chapter 8:26. She took out her phone and called Ling Jing. The number was naturally the one she had given him. No one picked up. Su Peijian thought about it and decided to give Ling Jing one last chance. She set a time with the doctor, then sent the address of the hospital and the time to Ling Jing. If he didn't come, then he couldn't blame her. Su Peijian was very busy. The company's annual party was in 2 days. After the party, except for the staff on duty, everyone else would have a holiday. Su Peijian booked a 7-day holiday for herself and asked Zhou Mei to arrange it. She would take Xiang Kaiping out during the new year. She hadn't told Xiang Kaiping about this. Since they came out, Xiang Kaiping had been really nice to her. Although such kindness often made her feel pressured, since they were already together, she was willing to make Xiang Kaiping happy. That night, Su Peijian didn't go to Rome Garden but returned to the villa. She told Xiang Kaiping about the annual party and asked her to attend. After all, there were still many old employees in the company. She didn't want them to be too disappointed. Secondly, she told Xiang Kaiping about her arrangements. Xiang Kaiping would go out with her. Abroad? Xiang Kaiping was very surprised. Where? It's a good season to go to Hawaii. Su Peijian had already decided. The weather there is very good. It's suitable for a vacation. Okay. Xiang Kaiping used to be like this. When Su Qingsang said that she would take her out, she would arrange it. She just had to go with her. Now that her daughter said that she would go out with her, Xiang Kaiping was very happy. Then, I'll clean up later. Su Peijian didn't object. She had to get up early the next morning for a checkup at the hospital. As long as she lived in the villa, Fictional would wake up early every day. Although the villa was small, the neighborhood was not bad. It took about 40 minutes to run around the green area, which was enough exercise. Fictional finished running and was about to go home. A golden retriever rushed out in front of her and almost bumped into her. She took a step back and saw a gentle-looking man rush out in front of her and quickly grab the golden retriever's rope. Dien, you're being naughty again. The man grabbed the rope. When he looked up and saw that the golden retriever almost bumped into a beautiful woman, he was stunned for a moment and quickly apologized. Sorry, I was distracted just now and didn't grab the rope. Did I scare you? Dien. Fictional glanced at the golden retriever. If she remembered correctly, Mrs. Lin's dog had the same name. He raised his head and looked at the person who had just arrived. His appearance was not bad, and his face was refined, but there was a sense of shrewdness in it. He was more like the CEO of a large company. However, such a big man can't even hold on to a rope. Forget about me, but what if I hit an elderly person or a child? Fictional did not mince her words. She was not against blind dates, nor was she against marriage. However, she didn't like the arrangements and compensation that Xiang Kaiping felt guilty about. She was very good at ruining his good impression. After saying that, she glanced at the man again. Next time, keep an eye on the dog. Raising a dog requires a sense of responsibility. Otherwise, don't raise them. The man didn't get angry after listening to her. Instead, he smiled and said, yes. The young miss was right. Thank you for reminding me. I'll be more careful next time. Having said that, Fictional didn't stay any longer. Her hair, which was tied into a ponytail, swung in the air, and her figure in white sportswear floated away just like that. The man was left standing there, looking at her figure in a daze. Finally, he lowered his head to look at his golden retriever. Dien, she's so beautiful, isn't she? The golden retriever's reaction was to break free from his hand again and run forward happily. Fictional didn't have breakfast with Xiang Kaiping because she had a physical examination. As for meeting Mrs. Lin's son in the morning, she didn't mention a word about it. She didn't want Xiang Kaiping to have any ulterior motives. She said that she wanted to have a physical examination, and Xiang Kaiping didn't think much of it. She knew that when she was in the Su family would have a physical examination every year. When Fictional arrived, Ling Jing wasn't there. She had made an appointment, so she didn't have to wait. She looked at her watch with a cold face. Ling Jing, Pasian. The sudden voice made Fictional's body stiffen. However, it only lasted for a moment. Soon, she turned around and faced the person. She had the urge to knock herself on the head. She had made an appointment at the best private hospital in Rome City. She knew that Su Qingsang was in the first hospital in the city, so she didn't expect to see her here. Long time no see. The expression on her face was indifferent, and she didn't try to hide her emotions. She didn't seem to be very enthusiastic. Long time no see. Ever since Su Qingsang gave birth to 2 children, she had become more charming. She used to be only a 7 out of 10, but after being spoiled by Hu Jinyao for the past 2 years, she had completely become a happy little woman. Not only did she look more elegant, but her temperament had also changed a lot. Even the white doctor's robe couldn't hide it. Are you not feeling well? Su Qingsang looked at her with concern. What's wrong? I'm fine. Fictional couldn't say it. What should she say? That she suspected that the gigolo she kept might be sick, so she wanted to have a physical examination. She didn't think that there was anything wrong with keeping a gigolo. This was her own life, and she wasn't guarding against anyone. However, standing in front of Su Qingsang, her pride as the daughter of the Su family came back. Su Peijian shook her head, rejecting Su Qingsang's concern. Why are you here? This hospital is opened by Hua Jiniao's friend. They have a complicated surgery recently. So I asked my teacher to come over and help. I'm here as an assistant doctor. Su Qingsang explained why she was there. She looked at Su Peijian with a worried look on her face. Are you really okay? I'm really okay, we're just here for a physical examination. A voice that didn't belong here sounded. Su Peijian's shoulder was already surrounded by someone. No one knew when Ling Jing had arrived. She was wearing a casual jacket. She put one hand on Su Peijian's shoulder. Yes, we're just here for a physical examination. After all, Peijian and I are planning to get married and have children in the future. Of course, we have to have a physical examination first. Su Peijian couldn't help but look at Ling Jing. What nonsense was he talking about? Damn this man, was he itching for a beating? Su Qingsang was even more shocked. Hua Jiniao's uncle had been thinking of ways to get Hua Yifan out. Su Peijian and Hua Yifan were together before. She thought that when Hua Yifan came out, the two of them might be able to continue their relationship. She had even mentioned this to Hua Jiniao once. She really wanted to wait for them to be together, as long as Hua Yifan didn't cause trouble. That would make Grandpa agree to them being together. Unexpectedly, Su Peijian's body stiffened. If Su Qingsang wasn't here, she had no doubt that she would tear this man apart on the spot. She turned to face him, and there was a hint of coldness in her smile. You seem to be late. Sorry, dear. Ling Jing kissed her on the cheek, ignoring the coldness in her eyes. There was a bit of a traffic jam on the way, so I'm late. Dear, you won't blame me, will you? Of course not. Ling Jing kissed her on the cheek again, not missing Su Peijian's murderous gaze. He had been so angry with Su Peijian that he wanted to stomp his feet. This time, he finally calmed down a lot. Dear, this is Su Qingsang, Su Peijian's sister. The wife of the president of Tianyu Group. The woman in the palm of Hua Jiniao's hand. Of course, he knew her, but he asked this deliberately. Su Peijian couldn't answer this question. If she introduced Su Qingsang as her sister, it would be equivalent to admitting the other party's identity. The problem was that she wasn't sure if the current Su family and Su Qingsang would admit her identity. She couldn't do something like automatically sticking to it. Hello. My name is Su Qingsang. I'm Peijian's sister. Su Qingsang's words stunned Su Peijian for a moment, but Ling Jing was quite familiar with her. Oh, it's sister. Hello, sister. My name is Ling Jing. I'm Peijian's man. Su Qingsang nodded. She didn't ask more about Ling Jing's claim to be Su Peijian's man, not her boyfriend. She looked at the time. Peijian. I'm going to the surgery. Let's have a good talk next time when we're free. Her words were very sincere. She could even forgive Su Qinghui, so there was nothing to be worried about in the past. As for Su Peijian's attitude, she didn't care much. Let's talk when we're free. Su Peijian gave people a rather cold feeling, but Su Qingsang wasn't angry. Su Peijian's attitude had been like this for more than 20 years. She looked at Ling Jing again. She was good-looking, and it seemed that she had a good relationship with Su Peijian. It was good. Whether it was Xiang Kaiping or Su Qinghui, if Su Peijian lived a good life, they would both be more relieved. As soon as Su Qingsang left, Su Peijian immediately waved Ling Jing's hand away from her shoulder. Her gorgeous face was full of gloominess, and every word that came out of her mouth was almost squeezed out from between her teeth. Ling Jing. What's wrong? Who gave you the courage? There was no one around, so Su Peijian pulled his body and pushed him against the wall. She placed her elbow on his neck. Who asked you to talk nonsense? What nonsense did I say? Ling Jing smiled a little carelessly. Su Peijian was angry. She was about to use force with her elbow, but Ling Jing turned around and pressed her against the wall. Ling Jing, looking at Su Peijian's face, Ling Jing couldn't help but think of how angry he was when he saw the text message yesterday. Yes. He felt strange himself. He had planned to ignore Su Peijian, but when he left, he just happened to take the phone with him. He was the dignified young Master Ling. What phone did he lack? But the phone was given to him by this woman. Yes, it was a gift. Even though he knew the purpose of the phone, he still took it with him. When the phone first rang yesterday, Ling Jing was still angry and didn't want to answer it. Based on what? Why did he answer this woman's phone call? Just because she thought of him now, and let him appear in front of her. He didn't want that. He wanted to wait for that woman to keep calling him and begging him. At that time, maybe he would be willing to answer her phone call reluctantly. Unexpectedly, that woman called him once and then stopped. Then, she sent him a text message with only an address and a time. The address was not difficult to find, and it was found almost immediately. After finding out where the address represented, Ling Jing felt uncomfortable. Damned woman, she's actually serious. He, the dignified young master of the Ling family, was actually asked to have a physical examination before he was allowed to sleep with a woman. The anger burned him to the point that he lost all rationality. He showed up today to teach that woman a lesson, but now he saw that the woman was pressed against the wall by him. The unfinished things from last time came to his mind at this moment. Without thinking, he kissed Su Peijian's lips. Woman, such a beautiful little mouth should be used for kissing, not cursing. It took Su Peijian some time to hear his muffled voice. She didn't have time to flirt with this man, but he insisted on deepening the kiss in this kind of place. Su Qingsang walked halfway and wanted to tell Su Peijian that Su Qinghui would come over in a few days. However, after taking 2 steps, she saw the two of them kissing. She was a little embarrassed, so she quickly went back. The figure came and left. Su Peijian saw it clearly from the corner of her eye. She was so angry that she raised her hand and slapped Ling Jing. Ling Jing grabbed her hand and looked at Su Peijian. He suppressed his anger and clicked his tongue. You're not satisfied. It's really not suitable to continue here. Why don't you come back after the physical examination? Su Peijian was not in the mood to listen to his nonsense. Her mind was full of anger that this man had taken advantage of her in such a place. There's no need for the physical examination, Su Peijian said coldly. I've decided that our relationship is invalid. You can leave now. Her tone was gloomy and her attitude was cold. This woman was as annoying as ever. Ling Jing gritted his teeth and thought of Shen Jing, who was locked in the basement. He really had the urge to lock this woman up too. Burn the bridge after crossing it. Woman, you're so heartless. I've said that I want you to follow my rules. Since you can't do it, then get out. As Su Peijian spoke, she pushed him away forcefully. Someone was coming from the corridor, so Ling Jing couldn't press him anymore. Seeing that Su Peijian seemed to be leaving with a cold face, he stood in front of her. Tut, you're leaving just like that. 1,500,000 just for 2 nights. Don't you think it's a loss? His voice was very soft, and there was a hint of contempt in his eyes. Su Peijian looked at him without a trace of emotion on her face. It's good that you know you've made a profit. Take the money and leave. Let's forget about this matter. Forget it. What if I don't want to leave? Ling Jing was still arguing with her. After all, who would complain about having more money? Rascal. Su Peijian looked at him coldly. Enough is enough. Otherwise, I have a lot of ways to make you lose everything. You want me to lose everything? Ling Jing raised his eyebrows, and the emotion in his eyes was unclear. You don't believe me. It was true that Su Peijian was no longer the eldest daughter of the Su family, but there were some things she could still do, especially to deal with such a small fry. Chapter 827. The slightly raised chin, the arrogant tone, and the almost innate pride in his eyes. The more Su Peijian behaved like this, the more he wanted to conquer her. Ling Jing's brain was working fast. He was thinking about how to make Su Peijian yield to him. Who was Ling Jing? The young master of the Ling family had been spoiled since he was a child. He had suffered losses in Su Peijian's hands several times, but it didn't mean that he had no way. His brain was working fast. Looking at Su Peijian's face, a very bold idea flashed through his mind. He suddenly smiled. This Su Peijian was cold-hearted and had such an experience. The way to deal with ordinary women might not be able to make her soften. But it didn't mean that there was no way. Who was he? The young master of the Ling family had been dealing with the evil people in his family since he was a child. His acting skills were not perfect, but at least 70%. If he made this woman fall in love with him willingly, then he could dump her. Ling Jing couldn't think about it. He was excited when he thought about it. This idea was good, very good. Woman, we still have a long way to go. For now, I won't argue with you. Su Peijian pushed him away. The moment she turned to leave, the nurse was already ready. Come out and call someone. They had already made an appointment before the physical examination. Su Peijian stood there without moving, but Ling Jing took her hand. Let's go, dear. Su Peijian's reaction was to pull her hand back and look at him coldly. Dear, I know it was my fault just now. I just don't have much experience with women. Ling Jing blinked at Su Peijian, and there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. I don't have much experience. Dear, you have to give me another chance, right? Right? Su Peijian stared at his face in silence. Ling Jing's appearance was indeed good, especially when he smiled. His long and narrow eyes were slightly raised, looking particularly charming. The flattering look on his face was too obvious. She had always hated this kind of man. Because she had seen this kind of expression too many times when she was the young mistress of the Su family. But it was this kind of man who was the safest for her. He liked money and didn't want to lose her, his sugar daddy. A man with a weakness and easy to control was far cheaper than changing a man. Her eyes fell on Ling Jing's hand, which was still holding hers. Ling Jing retracted her hand as she glared at her. Darling, let's go. The physical examination would take a long time. Since she was already there, Su Peijian decided to do a thorough examination. The inspection took the whole morning. After the physical examination, Su Peijian had to go back to work. When she got on the car, she found that Ling Jing had followed her car. She frowned slightly. Anything else? Give me a ride. Ling Jing smiled brightly, but Su Peijian didn't like his sloppy attitude. I remember the first day you took my money, you bought a Cadillac. Don't tell me you can't drive. The car has been sent for maintenance. Ling Jing lied without changing her expression. Su Peijian didn't care about such trivial matters, and she didn't intend to see him off. He took out his wallet from the bag behind him and took out a stack of red notes. Get out of the car and take a taxi back. You don't have to be so cruel, do you? Ling Jing didn't take the money. Just give me a ride on the way. Besides, we will be together for a few months. Don't you want to take this opportunity to get to know me better? No. Su-Peision directly broke his illusion. I don't need to know you better. Besides, it's not like we will be together for a few months. It depends on my mood to decide whether I want to continue this relationship with you or not. Su-Peision's attitude was infuriating. Ling Jing already wanted to strangle this woman, but he smiled brightly on the surface. Okay, you're the boss. Of course, you have the final say. Ling Jing took half of the money from Su-Peision's hand and pretended to kiss it. When he looked at Su-Peision, there was a slight smile in his eyes. I'll wait for you tonight. As if afraid that Su-Peision wouldn't come, he added, don't worry, I'll prepare a small raincoat. Su-Peision didn't like Ling Jing's attitude, but seeing him get out of the car obediently, the resentment in her heart finally dissipated a little. Forget it, he's just a little hooligan with a pretty good appearance. She didn't have to stoop to his level. Su-Peision quickly went to do her own things. In the evening, she originally wanted to go back to the villa, but when the car drove out of the parking lot, she thought of that man. Finally, the car turned and went back to Rhone Garden. She had been quite tired recently, and she really needed a place to vent. She didn't call. She thought that Ling Jing would definitely wait for her today. She parked the car and went upstairs. The light in the living room confirmed her thoughts. There was a flash of contempt in Su-Peision's eyes. She didn't directly go back to her room, but went to the study first. There were a few documents on hand to deal with, and 2 emails to answer. She now had a large sum of money on hand, and she was making new investments. On the open computer screen, the red and green lines kept changing. Su-Peision was familiar with the transactions of buying and selling. As early as when she was in high school, she was taken by Su Qinghui to participate in some of the investments of the Li Corporation. Of course, it also included Su Qinghui's private investments. When the data changed, her phone rang. Only then did she remember that she forgot to tell Xiang Kaiping that she wasn't going back. She got up and found her phone in her coat to answer the call. It was indeed Xiang Kaiping. She asked her about the results of the physical examination and if she was going home. She hung up on Xiang Kaiping and turned around to find that Ling Jing had come in at some point. He was standing in front of the computer screen and looking at it. Don't move. Su-Peision stepped forward and sat down on the chair. She didn't see the flash of surprise in Ling Jing's eyes. Since Ling Jing had investigated Su-Peision, he naturally knew her abilities. He also knew about Su-Peision's previous position in the Li Corporation. However, rumors were always exaggerated. Naturally, he didn't really take Su-Peision's abilities seriously. He couldn't be clearer about the screen in front of him. He had been playing since he was a teenager. Naturally, he knew what it meant. He looked at Su-Peision with an unclear look in his eyes. Su-Peision met his gaze and toned down her tone a little. What are you doing here? Go out first. I still have something to do. Ling Jing didn't leave. He looked at the screen and pretended to be puzzled. What are you doing? Speculating in the stock market? No. Su-Peision didn't have the patience to explain what she was doing to such a hooligan, so she didn't want to say more. Ling Jing didn't want to leave. He looked at Su-Peision with an inquisitive expression. Not speculating in the stock market? I think it looks like it. Can you make money from this? Does it have anything to do with you? Of course it does. Ling Jing stood beside her and pretended to be a rascal. If you can make money, I want to make some too. Can't I? Do you understand? Do you know what I'm doing? Just follow me to make money. I don't understand. But don't you understand? Ling Jing put a hand on her shoulder. I'll follow you. Isn't that enough? Su Peijian withdrew her hand from the table and turned to look at him. When it comes to investing, no matter what you do, it's risky. It doesn't mean that you can definitely get the money back if you take it out. What's more, do you have money? Of course I do. Ling Jing paused for a moment and suddenly smiled. Don't I still have $1 million with you? You can just treat it as an advance and invest that $1 million in it. Su Peijian glanced at his hand on her shoulder and removed it expressionlessly. Aren't you afraid of losing everything? I'm not afraid. That's all. I'll stay with you for a while longer. Ling Jing's words were rascally. Su Peijian frowned. Ling Jing, let me say it again. The relationship between us is decided by me. I don't have to have you. And if you make such a decision, you may still lose everything. It doesn't matter. Didn't I say that I still have you? Su Peijian couldn't bear to see him acting so carelessly. After thinking for a moment, she spoke in a rare moment of kindness. Ling Jing, I don't mean to look down on you. But from my point of view, I personally suggest that you invest in some real estate after you have money. After all, it will be more secure for you. Su Peijian didn't finish her sentence. She believed that Ling Jing could understand what she meant. Some words really didn't need to be said too clearly. Ling Jing understood what she meant. He looked at Su Peijian with a somewhat unclear gaze. Su Peijian, who thought that he had given up, turned her face back to the screen. Okay, you can go out first. I'm not leaving. Ling Jing's rascally attitude came up. He hooked his arm around Su Peijian's shoulder. It's just money. I believe you. I'll use that $1 million as a bargaining chip. You help me make money. How about that? Su Peijian turned her face to look at him. Because he was hooking his arm around her shoulder, the two of them were very close. They were so close that she could see his long black eyelashes and his beautiful phoenix eyes. The color of his eyes wasn't pure black. Instead, they were a little amber. The man's perfect appearance made her want to lose some of her anger. However, she said, if I help you make money, what benefit will I get? Benefit? Ling Jing hooked his other arm around her slender waist. The benefit is me. How about that? Has anyone ever told you that being overconfident is conceited? No. So what if Ling Jing was conceited? He had the capital to be conceited. How about this? I'll give you the $1 million, and you help me invest. If you can make $1 million, I'll earn another month from you. For every $1 million you make, I'll accompany you for another month. How about that? Nothing. Su Peijian's face was cold. She pulled his hand down. First, if I use your $1 million to make more $1 million, I can find another man. Not you. Secondly, for every $1 million I help you earn, I'll give it to you. You're only accompanying me for 1 more month. Do you want to recall our previous contract? I'll buy you for $2 million for half a year. So what makes you think that I'll do this deal? Chapter 828. Su Peijian turned off the computer and got up to take a shower. At this time, Ling Jing hugged her waist and took her to roll to the bed in the study. What are you doing? What am I doing? Ling Jing smiled and took off Su Peijian's clothes. Looking for another man. Ha! It seems that I should prove to you that I am much better than other men. This woman had challenged his bottom line again and again. Where would his dignity as a man go? Did this woman really think that young Master Ling had no temper? Ling Jing, get off me. No. Ling Jing shook his head. He had been thinking about this for a long time. Today, he must teach her a lesson. He must conquer her. Su Peijian wanted to get away, but she forgot that there was a huge difference in strength between a man and a woman. Moreover, who was Ling Jing? If he hadn't deliberately let her go, how could Su Peijian have taken advantage of him? Woman. He held her waist tightly in his palm, not letting her break free. I will let you know who is the most real man. Ling Jing. Su Peijian didn't look anxious. She looked at the man above her coldly. I'll give you 3 seconds to let go. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Really? Ling Jing turned his face and gently bit her earlobe. I choose to make you happy for 30 minutes. You. She raised her foot to attack Ling Jing, but Ling Jing was prepared and pressed his leg against hers. He made her unable to move. Su Peijian was angry, but all her movements were countered by him. She looked at Ling Jing and felt a little different for the first time. Men and women, different strength. She was no match for him. The war began again, but this time, it was Ling Jing who blew the horn. Night. It seemed to be extremely long. It also seemed extremely short. Although it was said to be 30 minutes, it seemed to be far more than that. The long night had no end. She wanted to close her eyes, and that man would find a way to make her open them. She wanted to sleep, but that man always had a way to wake her up. She wanted to be completely awake, but that man always had a way to make her confused. She wanted to escape, but her body had already turned into a ball of water. There was nowhere to run. She heard the man in her ear, repeatedly asking, how? In this world, who else can make you so passionate? Where else can you find a man stronger than me? Where else can you find a man who can make you so happy? Over and over again, he felt dizzy. He could vaguely hear the word happy. Su Peijian was completely confused. Happiness? She had almost forgotten what it was like to be happy. It was as if she had once been on Li Qinchua's knees, listening to her laugh and tell her fairy tales. It also felt like she used to follow Su Qinghui and let him take care of her. The happy time in her memory was too long ago, so long that she had already forgotten about it. Her body was hit hard, and her wandering mind made him unhappy. He restrained his expression and looked at the dazed eyes below him. Woman, it seems like I haven't worked hard enough. There was indeed happiness, extreme and pure happiness that belonged only to the body. His heart was still empty. There seemed to be something inside, but it also seemed like there was nothing. Closing her eyes, she chose to indulge herself. If the heart was not happy, the happiness of the body was also a kind of happiness. Raising her head, she suddenly bit the other party's shoulder. Ha! Woman, is this your response to me? As you wish. The long night was endless. Back and forth. The horn did not stop. When Su Peijian woke up, it was already dawn. It was the first time she had woken up late since she was released from prison. She tried to get up, but her body was unbelievably soft. She didn't have much strength at all. She had been too indulgent last night. After a while, she got up again, but suddenly realized that something was wrong. Turning her face, she found that Ling Jing was sleeping beside her. His hand was on her waist, trapping her body in his arms. No wonder she felt unable to get up just now. She took Ling Jing's hand away and wanted to get up, but Ling Jing woke up at this moment. When he saw Su Peijian beside him, he pulled her waist into his arms. You're awake. Su Peijian couldn't move. Her body was very tired. The reason for tossing around was that her limbs were sore. Let go of me. As soon as the voice came out, Su Peijian was shocked herself. Her throat was almost hoarse. Her throat was uncomfortable, and her voice was unpleasant to hear. No. Compared to her, Ling Jing was refreshed. Su Peijian had been used too much yesterday, and her whole body was still crimson. Not only was she crimson, but her body was also full of marks left by him. He still remembered last night, when she strictly forbade him not to leave marks on her body. But he didn't listen. Young Master Ling's rebellious mentality came up. The more she didn't want him to do, the more he wanted to do it. Not only did he want to leave marks, but he also wanted to leave as many marks as possible. He didn't leave any leeway, but when had Su Peijian ever been soft-hearted? Ling Jing's body had more scratches and bite marks than hers. The two of them seemed to be in a competition, with the ruthlessness of wanting to devour the other party into their bones. Of course, it was undeniable. This feeling was very satisfying. Ling Jing's body was extremely satisfied. What was even more satisfying was that he finally heard this damned woman beg for mercy yesterday. Even if she begged for mercy in bed, so what? How was last night? He nibbled her earlobe and took her to review the fiery passion between them last night. Su Peijian wanted to push him away, but her raised hand was indeed a little weak. She glanced at him coldly. Enough. Can you let go of me now? No. Ling Jing shook his head and kissed her face again. You haven't told me if you're satisfied or not. Su Peijian refused to answer. Ling Jing's hand slowly moved down and reached for her waist. In that case, you must be dissatisfied. Since I took your money, how can I make you dissatisfied? Naturally, I have to do it until you're satisfied. As he spoke, he pretended to do it again. How could Su Peijian afford it? She didn't want to break her waist at such a young age. Enough. Then, were you satisfied yesterday? Ling Jing had to get an answer. Su Peijian didn't want to answer, but the man's threat was very obvious. Let go. You first. Were you satisfied? Satisfied? Is that enough? Can you let go of me now? Yes. Ling Jing nodded but didn't let go. Instead, he moved a little closer to her. Then, are you going to find another man? Su Peijian closed her eyes and resisted the urge to explode. Ling Jing, you can try. If you don't get off, I'll go find another man tonight. Cruel woman. Ling Jing leaned over and kissed her delicate red lips. But, I like it. A man's love couldn't be taken seriously. Su Peijian knew that. But looking at the man in front of her, with a pair of extremely charming phoenix eyes, blinking at her and saying that he liked it, she had to admit that this man did have some ability to make women fall for him. Chapter 829. Su Peijian didn't realize what Ling Jing, that bastard, had done until she stood in front of the mirror. Looking at the marks on her shoulders, Yu Xiong's mouth, and even her arms, she was so angry that her face turned green. Tomorrow night was the company's annual meeting, and she had to attend it in a gown. How could she attend in her current state? She secretly gritted her teeth, wishing she could skin Ling Jing, chop him up, and feed him to the dogs. Damn that man. The anger on Su Peijian's face was obvious, especially when she found that even the simple action of walking felt weak in her legs. She really wanted to punch that bastard. She had always been disdainful of hiding her emotions. When she went out, she inevitably showed it on her face. Ling Jing knew that he had made this woman unhappy again yesterday, but so what? This was just the beginning. To conquer her. To make this woman fascinated by him, whether in bed or out of bed, that was his goal. Thinking of this, Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian, who was about to go out with her bag and coat, and quickly stepped forward. You're going to work. Let me walk you. If young Master Ling's subordinates saw his gentle tone, their eyes would probably pop out. When had they seen young Master Ling so patient with a woman? No need. Su Peijian looked at him with some disdain in her eyes. Although she was afraid of the cold, she had always hated wearing too much. Today, she had tied a silk scarf around her neck to hide the marks on her neck. Fortunately, when he went to the office later, there was a heater. It would definitely be hot. How was she going to take off the scarf? Her tone wasn't very good, but Ling Jing, who already had a plan, didn't care at all. Darling, I think it's better if I give it to you. As Ling Jing spoke, he glanced at Su Peijian, and his gaze fell on her waist for a while. After all, your legs should be a little weak now, right? Su Peijian glared at Ling Jing, and an ice blade flashed in her eyes. She took 2 steps forward and stood in front of him, reaching out and grabbing the front of the man's shirt. I'll say it again, no need. Darling, are you angry? Ling Jing clicked his tongue and looked at her, grabbing his hand. You still have the strength to be angry. It seems that I was merciful yesterday. Su Peijian was about to speak, but Ling Jing lowered his head and kissed her lips. It was a very provocative kiss. Su Peijian's hands were still holding on to the front of his shirt. She wanted to push him away, but her body's memory unconsciously responded. At the last moment, Su Peijian pushed him away. His breathing quickened as he took a step back. She glanced at him coldly and walked out without looking back. You really don't want me to send you? Don't worry, I'm not only good at that, I'm also good at driving. Su Peijian's reaction was to pull the door open and slam it shut. Su Peijian didn't want to go back to Rose Garden that night, but she thought that if she went home, she would have to take off the scarf. Xiang Kaiping might see the marks on her body. She gritted her teeth and had no choice but to return to Rose Garden at night. It was close to the end of the year, but she always did not go home. Xiang Kaiping felt uneasy and felt that there was still a gap between her and Xiang Kaiping. Su Peijian couldn't explain. She just said that she was too busy at the company. Anyway, when the new house was renovated and it was closer to the company, she would accompany her more. After taking a shower, she found Ling Jing lying on her bed. She had no time to pay attention to him. She did her pre-bedtime maintenance. When she lay down, she wanted to chase Ling Jing to the study to sleep. However, he turned over and pressed himself on top of her. Get off. Not today. Are you willing to? Ling Jing pressed her waist to let her feel his passion. This damned woman had just taken off her clothes and put on moisturizer. Her movements were so slow and seductive. If she wasn't seducing him, what was she doing? Ling Jing, I want to rest today. Don't worry, I'll only do it once. He lowered his head and kissed her lips, not giving her a chance to refuse. Su Peijian's refusal was not thorough. He had to admit that Ling Jing was indeed an expert in this aspect. Not only was he full of tricks, but he could always find her point. Most of all, he made her body happy. While her body was happy, the emptiness in her heart could be forgotten. This was the first annual meeting after Xiang Kaiping handed over the department store to Su Peijian. Because it was the first time, she made it very grand and booked a relatively famous 5-star hotel in Rose City. The dress that Su Peijian originally picked was a white one with slanted shoulders. Because of that bastard Ling Jing, there were many marks on her body, neck, and shoulders. Even after a day, it didn't disappear. Su Peijian had to change her plan and choose a dark purple cheongsam. This color couldn't be suppressed by ordinary people. Not to mention that the cheongsam was particularly picky about the figure. Su Peijian had a good figure and temperament. This outfit complemented her and could only make her temperament more outstanding. She came directly from the company. She had originally said that she was going to pick up Xiang Kaiping, but unexpectedly, Xiang Kaiping said that she had someone to send her. Xiang Kaiping was used to saving money. Su Peijian thought that she had taken a taxi. Unexpectedly, the person who sent her turned out to be the man she had met once. Mrs. Lin's son. Peijian. When Xiang Kaiping saw Su Peijian, she was still a little afraid that she would be unhappy. However, yesterday, Mrs. Lin took the initiative to ask about Su Peijian. Her son also came to visit. Although he said it was to visit a new neighbor, he actually had an ulterior motive. When Xiang Kaiping heard that there was a chance, she immediately perked up. So she mentioned that there was an annual meeting at the company today. She asked him to send her over. First, she wanted Su Peijian to meet him. Second, she wanted to give the two of them a chance. However, she had her own selfish motives. She didn't mention a word about Su Peijian's imprisonment. From the moment Lin Feixing entered the door, his eyes had never left Su Peijian. His obviously stunned expression made her feel that she had made the right decision. This is what I told you before. Mrs. Lin's son knew that I was coming, so he sent me here on his way. I was thinking that since you don't have a dance partner today, why don't you ask him to be your dance partner later? Xiang Kaiping said it very casually, but the meaning behind her words was self-evident. Su Peijian had a headache. She met the man's somewhat eager gaze. She really couldn't accept Xiang Kaiping's actions. Sure. Hello. Miss Su, right? I'm Lin Feixing. I heard my mother mention you. Lin Feixing stood at the side and spoke at the right time. He was wearing a dark suit today. He looked a little more formal than that day. His elite demeanor wasn't annoying, but it also couldn't be compared to him recently. Hello. There was not much enthusiasm on Su Peijian's face. She was willing to bet that Xiang Kaiping didn't tell him about her situation. Thank you for sending my mother here. There are a lot of things to do today, so I might not be a good host. This way, please. You don't have to entertain me. I can sit with Auntie Su. Lin Feixing expressed his attitude at the right time. He was not impatient or cold. His propriety was just right. Su Peijian couldn't help but take another look at him. Then she went to greet the others. In addition to the company's employees, Su Peijian also invited some people from her partners. The annual party was quite lively. She followed the process when she was at the Li Corporation, just a little less. After all, the Li family had many more employees than this. To her, this was really just a small event. Lin Feixing sat next to Xiang Kaiping and watched Su Peijian become the main character of the party with ease. His eyes became more and more eager. Xiang Kaiping looked at Lin Feixing and felt a little relieved. In fact, she had a lot of things to say, but it was not appropriate to say a word here. Peijian is really very capable. Ever since she joined the company, I haven't been involved in the company's affairs. She is very good at it. Yes. I can see that. Lin Feixing's eyes never left Su Peijian. Xiang Kaiping was even more satisfied. She hoped that Su Peijian could be happy. Even if Su Peijian said that she didn't want to get married, as a woman, if she didn't get married, who knew how much criticism there would be? She herself had been like that all the way, and that was because she had run far enough. When explaining to others, she only said that her husband died early and that she didn't want to find another one. But even so, she had experienced a lot of criticism and looks over the years. She didn't want Su Peijian to go through that again. In the end, she still believed that women should have a place to return to. Su Peijian went on stage to give a speech, summarizing the past and looking forward to the future. During the opening dance, as expected, Lin Feixing asked her to dance. Because Xiang Kaiping was there, Su Peijian didn't refuse. As she spun with Lin Feixing on the dance floor, her voice was very soft. Mr. Lin. I think there might be something my mother didn't explain to you clearly. You don't have to be so polite. Just call me Feishing. Su Peijian wasn't in a hurry to change the way she addressed him. She looked in Xiang Caiping's direction, who was looking at her with a gratified expression. She had a headache. In some ways, she really didn't like what Xiang Caiping did. Xiang Caiping was her mother, the only family she had left. Mr. Lin, I know what my mother means, and I can roughly understand what you mean. But I want to tell you that some people are not like what you see. I know, so I really want to know more about you, Miss Su. Lin Feishing's enthusiasm didn't diminish. Can I call you by your name, Peijian? I think your name is very nice. It's too distant to call you Miss Su. I've been in prison. Su Peijian's voice was very soft, but it made Lin Feishing's expression change. Miss Su, the two of them were still spinning on the dance floor. In terms of appearance, Lin Feishing was quite outstanding. But he wasn't Su Peijian's type. It should be said that at this stage, she wouldn't like any kind of man. 2 years ago, because of some reasons, I did something wrong. Then I was put in prison for 2 years. Even though Lin Feishing had been abroad, studied abroad, and had dealt with many big situations, when faced with Su Peijian's attitude, he didn't know how to respond for a moment. I've not only been in prison, but I've also been engaged. I've had other men before that. Su Peijian's dance steps were different, and the corners of her mouth were even curled up the whole time. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. She used an extremely cold tone to talk about her past. Mr. Lin, I hope you understand that I'm not like what you see. I'm also a good woman in the traditional sense. I can even say that I'm a bad woman. So, Mr. Lin, thank you for your kindness. The dance music was coming to an end. Su Peijian spun around, her expression much calmer than before. When the last circle stopped, Su Peijian stood still and bowed to Lin Feishing. Mr. Lin. Thank you for driving my mother here today, but I don't think we're suitable. She nodded slightly, turned around, and walked in Xiang Caiping's direction. When Xiang Caiping saw her coming, her eyes lit up. How was it? How was Feishing? Su Peijian put her hand to her forehead. She just sat in his car, and she already called his name. Xiang Caiping's rhythm was really fast. Mom, Manager Zhang and Manager Lin wanted to say hello to you just now. Let's go over. Peijian. Let's talk about this when we get back, okay? Okay. As long as Su Peijian was willing to give him a chance, it was always good. After the annual party, Lin Feishing didn't leave. Su Peijian drank some wine, and Xiang Caiping suggested that she take Lin Feishing's car. Lin Feishing looked at Su Peijian, and she didn't refuse. Back at the villa, Su Peijian didn't rush upstairs. Instead, she sat down with Xiang Caiping in the living room. Mom. Peijian, what do you think of Feishing? I talked to him for a while today, and I think he's quite good. You can give him a chance, and I can also give you. Mom. Su Peijian stopped Xiang Caiping from continuing. I just told Mr. Lin that I was in prison. Xiang Caiping's expression changed. She looked at Su Peijian blankly, unable to believe that Su Peijian would do that. You. No matter what, she had to get in touch with him, right? If there were feelings, maybe Lin Feishing wouldn't mind. Mom, I thank you for your concern. I mean it. But I really hope that you understand. A woman's way out is not necessarily marriage, and I don't have any thoughts about that now. But that Feishing is really good. You. Mom, marriage isn't just about talking about conditions. At least you have to like him. At least there's sincerity. Su Peijian really didn't want to quarrel with Xiang Caiping over this, but she really didn't want it to happen again. I don't intend to lie to anyone about me. If he can accept it, then accept it. If not, then forget it. If you are really that worried about me, I can get married, but I won't be happy. Xiang Kaiping was speechless. She didn't know what was wrong, and why Su Peijian would have such a thought. Also, Mom, I only have you now. You and I will depend on each other for the rest of our lives. Even if we don't get married, I feel good about it. Is that okay? What else could Xiang Kaiping say after what she had said? Then that's it. Her eyes were filled with guilt again. Su Peijian didn't want to stay any longer, so she stood up. Mom, the plane is tomorrow morning. I'm going upstairs to sleep. You should sleep early too. Xiang Kaiping nodded, still unwilling to give up. Peijian, if Lin Feixing doesn't mind what happened in the past, can you give him a chance? Su Peijian had already decided to go upstairs, but hearing her words, she stopped. Seeing the passion in Xiang Caiping's eyes, she finally nodded. Okay, I promise you. If Lin Feixing doesn't mind, I will give him a chance. Xiang Kaiping breathed a sigh of relief. That was good. She was afraid that Su Peijian would reject anyone. Ling Jing had used his masculine charm to make Su Peijian beg for mercy yesterday. At least that was how he understood it. He thought that Su Peijian would come again today. However, he didn't expect that Su Peijian not only didn't come that night, but she also didn't come the next night. In the next 2 or 3 days, Su Peijian didn't show up at all. Not even a phone call or text message. Ling Jing, who was about to celebrate the new year, suddenly became irritable. He asked Gu Xiao to check it out. He wanted to know if that woman had gone to find another gigolo. After checking, he found out that the woman had gone abroad. She had taken her mother, whom she had met halfway, to the Aegean Sea. Woman. All of a sudden, Ling Jing felt that his masculine charm had suddenly become useless. Gu Xiao looked at Ling Jing's gloomy face, not understanding how Su Peijian's going abroad had angered Ling Jing. Young master, it's almost the new year. Shouldn't you go home? Madam has been talking about you for a long time. What's there to talk about? So what if it's the new year? The new year is the most boring. A group of people wished each other a happy new year with fake faces. TSK. Thinking about it made his teeth ache. Young master. Gu Xiao was having a headache. Madam and master both want you to go home. Besides, the new year is the day after tomorrow. Alright, stop nagging. That woman had gone abroad. This shabby apartment was indeed meaningless. I'll go back. But keep an eye on her. If that woman comes back, remember to tell me. Gu Xiao couldn't hide his shock, but he managed to keep the expression on his face. He looked at his young master. In all these years, he had never seen him care so much about a woman. Young master, don't tell me you've fallen for that Miss Su. Based on Miss Su's situation, he was afraid that master wouldn't be able to accept her. Gu Xiao felt a knock on his head. What nonsense are you talking about? Why would I fall for her? Let's go home. As if to prove his words, Ling Jing moved much faster this time. Gu Xiao followed behind him, the premonition in his heart growing stronger. Young master, if you don't like Miss Su, do I have to report to you that she's back? Gu Xiao received the second knock on his head that day. Su Peijian took Xiang Kaiping to the Aegean Sea for 5 days and took her to France for the remaining 5 days. She had been to these places before. But Xiang Kaiping hadn't. The last time Xiang Kaiping went abroad was with Su Qingsang. This time, she was with Su Peijian. As long as Su Peijian didn't ask Su Peijian to get married or find a man, the mother and daughter got along well. 10 days passed, and it was already the 8th day of the Lunar New Year. Su Peijian finally returned to Rong City with Xiang Kaiping. After returning home, Su Peijian threw herself back into work. The company's online platform and online shopping were doing well. In addition, it was during the Spring Festival, so this month's turnover was very good. Su Peijian enjoyed work and the sense of accomplishment that work brought. After this wave of work, she thought of Ling Jing again. Making money could make people happy. So could increasing wealth. But physical happiness often came in a simpler and more direct way. Before returning to Rome Garden, Su Peijian sent a message to Ling Jing, telling him that she would go over tonight. During this period, she hadn't received a message from Ling Jing about spending money. First, she had cancelled the message. Second, since the money was given to Ling Jing, it was his. He could spend it however he wanted. She had no intention of asking. According to that man's personality, the money should be almost spent. Anything that could be bought with money was cheap in Su Peijian's eyes. She naturally believed that Ling Jing would definitely be waiting for her. So when Su Peijian returned home and didn't see Ling Jing, she was a little surprised. That man didn't spend all his money during the Spring Festival. The doubt only lasted for a moment. Su Peijian quickly put this matter behind her. She didn't ask about Ling Jing's background, nor did she ask about Ling Jing's family. She didn't want to ask, and she didn't need to. Since he wasn't around, she would just relax. After opening a bottle of wine, Su Peijian sat on the balcony and looked at the night outside the window. Rome City was actually very prosperous, and the development here was also good. But she would always think of Lin City from time to time. She still remembered that her apartment was renovated by Li Qinxue. She still remembered her university graduation ceremony. Li Qinxue attended it with Su Qinghui and Su Yusin. She also remembered the first cooperation she negotiated in the company, the first time she independently proposed a plan. Those memories had never been mentioned in front of Xiang Kaiping, but they came back to her from time to time in her dreams. She drank the wine in the glass in one gulp. When she was about to pour herself more wine, the wine bottle in her hand was taken away. She didn't know when Ling Jing had returned and was sitting next to her. Drinking alone. Is it because you're lonely late at night when I'm not around? Damn that woman. She was gone for more than 10 days without a call or a text. It was fine that she didn't look for him when she came back. But today, she only sent a cold message saying that she was coming over. This woman was really ruthless and cold. Su Peijian ignored him. She wanted to get the wine bottle, but was stopped by Ling Jing. Ling Jing poured a glass of wine into her glass, took the glass in her hand, and took a sip. He lowered his head and sealed it with a kiss. His kiss was filled with hostility and rudeness. He was actually very angry. When he saw the message, his first reaction was anger, and his second reaction was not to come. He was not that woman's pet. Why should he show up with a text from Su Peijian? If he didn't come, what could she do to him? If he didn't want to show up, this woman wouldn't be able to find him even if she turned Rome City upside down. But when he threw the phone aside, his mind was thinking of Su Peijian's snow-white skin and her passionate reaction. He couldn't control his body. He told himself that he hadn't conquered this damn woman. He hadn't made her addicted to him and obsessed with him. So of course he had to come. Not only did he have to come, but he also had to keep nibbling away at her and make this woman fall in love with him little by little. The wine wasn't strong, but it was sweet. Su Peijian's wine was good. Of course, her taste was even better. Su Peijian didn't resist. She came over today to ask him to do it. She wasn't a pretentious woman. She put her hands around his neck and took the initiative. Chapter 8:30. Her voice was like a bell, and her eyes were like silk. But with the last bit of stubbornness. Go back to the room. Ling Jing ignored her. Instead, he held her waist and sat down on the sofa with her in his arms. Right here. No. Su Peijian refused. This kind of thing could only make people feel more secure in bed. Ling Jing lowered his head and began to bite her neck. Yes. The other kind of stimulation made Su Peijian unable to say the rest of her words. In the end, she couldn't go back to the room. Ling Jing took another sip of wine and fed her again. Over and over again, and finally, the red wine was drunk. Her body softened and heated up. The man's strength and the woman's gentleness were fully integrated at this moment. The temperature in the room rose steadily. Everything was gradually out of control. The rain stopped and the clouds dispersed. Su Peijian just collapsed on the sofa. She had no strength and didn't want to move. The man held her waist so that she wouldn't fall off the sofa. At this time, she was glad that she had changed the sofa to a bigger one for comfort. Neither of them wore clothes, and the room was heated enough. It wasn't cold, and it was even a little hot. Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian, lowered his head, looked at her smooth neck, and couldn't help but bite again. Su Peijian really couldn't bear it anymore. She looked up at him, her eyes almost spewing fire. Ling Jing didn't care. He bit very happily, left and right. After a while, Su Peijian's shoulders and neck couldn't be seen. Are you a dog? Su Peijian pushed his head, but Ling Jing surrounded her whole body. He lowered his head and was about to bite her again, but under Su Peijian's stare, he tilted his head. She got up and left him, but she didn't want him to buckle her waist again. She drank some wine, and that little bit of drunkenness was starting to get to her head. Now she needed to go to sleep. One more time. Let go. How could Ling Jing be willing to let go? He flipped over and got on top of her again. Then, he started a new round of attacking and plundering. Outside the window, snowflakes began to fall. This was the first snow of the new year. The snow fell silently. The temperature outside slowly dropped, but the temperature inside slowly rose. At that moment, Su Peijian forgot everything. Perhaps she was really drunk. His mind was blank. All he could sense and feel was the happiness in his body. The next day, when he woke up, it was already silvery white outside. It rarely snowed in Lin City. There was almost no snow in her memory. However, it snowed every winter in Rome City. It snowed not only in winter but also in spring. Today was Saturday, so she didn't have to work. Sleeping on the bed, he felt a little lazy. There was a strong arm around her waist, but she calmly moved it away. He stood up. His legs were still a little weak. He turned around and glanced at Ling Jing. This man was really impolite in some aspects. A little red wine would not make her drunk. Instead, it would wake her up. The more awake she was, the calmer she would be. He calmly tidied himself up and went to the kitchen to make breakfast for himself. It was snowing, and she didn't have much experience driving in the snow. Perhaps she should call a taxi to go back to the villa to see Xiang Kaiping. A hand appeared on her waist, and she was pulled into someone's embrace. She instinctively slapped the man's hand. Let go. I'm not letting go. Ling Jing buried his face in her neck. His eyes were still half closed, as if he hadn't woken up yet. Why did you get up earlier than me? It seems that I should have come a few more times last night. I said let go. Su Peijian elbowed her back, neither too lightly nor too heavily. Ling Jing had to let go of her. She took a step forward and continued what she was doing. Ling Jing leaned against the processing table next to him and watched Su Peijian's movements. She was really beautiful, and there was a natural elegance in her movements. He understood that she had been carefully cultivated by a big family. But besides elegance, this woman was also very cold. Perhaps it was because of the 2 years in prison, or the fall from a high place. She looked beautiful and charming on the surface, but there was a kind of alienation and indifference in her bones that kept people 1,000 miles away. She was passionate in bed, but when she got out of bed, she could turn her back on people. Such a contradictory individual, thorny and mysterious. Such a person made people want to conquer her. In the end, Su Peijian still made 2 sets of breakfast. After all, she believed that if she didn't make 2 sets, she was afraid that Ling Jing would come to rob her. 2 sandwiches, 2 glasses of milk, and a salad. Don't you feel bored eating this every day? Ling Jing sat down at the table and stared at the sandwiches on the table. Aren't you tired of it? Why don't we change it tomorrow? Su Peijian didn't answer him. Once, at the dining table of the Su family, she only needed to say a word, and all kinds of Chinese and Western breakfast were placed on the table. She used to make Su Qinghui's heart ache for a long time with just a slight frown. She used to say a word casually, and Li Qinxue would prepare everything she wanted. However, no matter how good the food was, no matter how much she got, once she lost it, she would find that it was all fleeting clouds. Ling Jing looked at the indifferent expression on her face and was a little unhappy. Su Peijian, who was passionate in bed at night, was more likable. It's snowing. How about we play after breakfast? Su Peijian's reaction was to raise her head and look at him coldly, but then she didn't answer him at all. After breakfast, Su Peijian went into the study. She had made a lot of money recently, and the company was slowly starting to recover. Her ambition was not limited to that. She had a few feasible plans in her hands, and she planned to do them one by one. She had a lot of time, and living was boring. Other than occasionally accompanying Xiang Kaiping, she couldn't find anything else that could get her attention. Making money was one of them. Using the ability she had learned from Su Qinghui and Li Qinxue to do these things made her have an illusion that she was still related to her past life. However, this time, her work didn't last long. Ling Jing came in. He was holding a glass of water in his hand. Here. Leave it, I'm not thirsty. You have to drink water even if you're not thirsty. Ling Jing put down the water and bent down to look at her. The book says that people have to drink 8 glasses of water a day. Ling Jing looked at her with a faint smile on his face. When he smiled, his beautiful almond-shaped eyes would rise a little. And I poured this glass of water myself. When had he, the young master of the Ling family, ever poured water for others? Even his old man and the Empress Dowager had never enjoyed such treatment. How dare this damned woman refuse? She really deserved to be taught a lesson. Su Peijian looked at the glass of water and then looked up at Ling Jing. She didn't quite understand what he was doing. But it was only for a moment. Soon, she understood. If he was unaccountably solicitous, he would either kill or steal. She had been giving him the cold shoulder recently. He probably had no money to spend, right? Su Peijian had to work now, so she didn't think much. She took out her phone and clicked on a payment app. After a few swipes. Finally, there was a transfer record of 100,000 yuan. Okay, you can go out now. She showed the page to Ling Jing. She felt that this should be enough to send him away. Unexpectedly, Ling Jing, who had a smile on her face, suddenly changed her expression. Ling Jing was angry. He had made a plan before to make Su Peijian fall in love with him and then dump her. So he condescended to pour water for her. How could he know that this damned woman didn't appreciate it and thought that he was short of money? He was the young master of the Ling family. When had he ever been treated like this? Ling Jing's face turned green. Not only did he not leave, but he took a step forward. He reached out to pull Su Peijian up, wanting to teach her a lesson. Su Peijian ignored him. She turned to look at the computer screen, her fingers dancing non-stop. Sensing Ling Jing's approach, she turned her face and looked up at him. Get out. Woman, you really pissed me off. Ling Jing didn't go out. Not only did he not leave, but he also pulled her up. Ling Jing, 100,000 yuan for a glass of water. Then shouldn't I do something more for you? Ling Jing had an absolute advantage in height and size. He picked her up and threw her onto the bed. Su Peijian's body bounced twice. She wasn't hurt, but it made her unhappy. She didn't plan to go out, so she was naturally wearing pajamas. She just wanted to get up, but that person pressed on her again. Ling Jing, get out. How can I go out? Ling Jing was so angry that he laughed. You've already paid. I have to make you feel that it's worth it, right? I don't want to now, but I want to. Ling Jing lowered his head to bite her lips. It was a real bite, with anger and venting. I want to. Ling Jing, the roles seemed to be reversed at this moment. Even if Su Peijian tried her best to resist, she still couldn't escape in the end. Under the absolute strength advantage of the man, her resistance was not worth mentioning. Or, she didn't want to resist. The two of them couldn't go out in the end, and Su Peijian couldn't continue to complete her plan. Meeting a young boy like Ling Jing was very annoying. Her waist was about to break. That weekend, the two of them spent the rest of the time in bed, except for solving the basic physical needs. If it was the usual Su Peijian, she would never give Ling Jing this opportunity. But right now, she really wanted to use these superficial pleasures to forget some things. After 2 days of fooling around, Su Peijian forced herself to focus on work again. The snow in Rome City had already stopped, and the weather was clear. Su Peijian also began her new round of career ambitions. When she got off work, she met a few clients. They were all old foxes. They talked for a long time, but they didn't give a definite answer. Su Peijian understood the mentality of these people, so she simply withdrew her original attitude of wanting to cooperate. She postponed the date of the negotiation. She had learned all her business skills from Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui had always been about mutual benefit and win-win. She didn't think these old foxes would lose out. They refused to let go, just because they wanted more benefits. After talking for a long time, they couldn't reach an agreement. Su Peijian was even unwilling to eat with this group of people. She ended the meeting directly. Because of meeting the clients, Su Peijian, who got off work late, still chose to return to Rome Park. This was just a subconscious reaction. She knew in her heart that wanting to return to Rome City didn't mean anything. It was very relaxing to be with Ling Jing, not because she liked Ling Jing so much, but because she felt safe with Ling Jing's simple relationship. The current Ling Jing represented safety to her. Chapter 831. There was a smell of something burning in the air. Not only was there a burning smell, but there was also a smell that seemed to be burning. Su Peijian quickly threw down her bag and rushed into the kitchen without even changing her shoes. The pot in the kitchen was already smoking. She didn't know what was cooking, but it was a black mass. Ling Jing's tall figure was standing in front of the pot, holding a bowl and pouring water into it. When the water entered the pot, it made a sizzling sound, but the smell was even stronger. What are you doing? Su Peijian quickly stopped Ling Jing's action, stepped forward, turned off the fire, and then covered the pot. She quickly glanced around and found that the kitchen had become unrecognizable in the time she had been back from work. The cooking table was a mess, the ingredients were not cut properly, and the stains on the ground couldn't tell whether it was water or oil. Even the wall at the side was splashed with a lot of stains, not to mention the black thing in the pot that he couldn't tell what it was. Ling Jing stood in front of the stove, wearing a white shirt, which was already a mess. He looked at her and smiled a little awkwardly. I am cooking. Cooking? Yes. Ling Jing nodded, and in a magnanimous manner, there was a bit of a look of asking for credit. I am cooking. I was going to cook for you. Su Peijian looked at the appearance of the kitchen, and then looked at the pot that was no longer smoking but still steaming. Are you sure you want to cook for me, not poison me? Inexplicably embarrassed, Ling Jing was a little uncomfortable. However, the awkwardness disappeared as quickly as it came. He was young Master Ling, the young master of the Ling family. With a sneer, he walked in front of Su Peijian. I want to poison you, do I have to go through so much trouble? I just made a mistake. A mistake. Su Peijian looked at his face, which was a little arrogant, a little ruffian, and a little proud. She turned her face away speechlessly. Come out. Was she going to clean up by herself? Su Peijian glanced at the messy kitchen and didn't intend to do it herself. She called Xiao Zhao to come over. When she was on the phone, her eyes swept around the kitchen again, and when she looked back at Ling Jing, she couldn't hide her disgust. Ling Jing is stimulated by her eyes and goes forward to hold her waist. After she hung up the phone, he couldn't help but bite her on the cheek. Why are you looking at me like that? I told you, it was a mistake. Don't you understand? Su Peijian tilted her head to look at him. She was unperturbed. If I remember correctly, there are a lot of delivery apps out there, right? Also, you can ask Xiao Zhao to come over and cook. No matter what, he wouldn't go to the extent of doing it himself. I already said that I'm cooking for you. Ling Jing seemed to be unconvinced. Isn't there a saying? Talk about capturing a man's heart. He had to grab this man's stomach first. Conversely, it should be the same for women, right? For the first time since Su Peijian walked in, she looked at this man seriously. There seemed to be a hint of flattery in the man's eyes. Considering their relationship, it was normal for him to please her. However, don't bother. I don't need this. Then what do you need? Ling Jing asked, almost subconsciously wanting to know. Su Peijian's mind went blank for a minute because of what he said. What did she need? I don't need anything. What she wanted would never come back in this lifetime. She was very clear. There will always be something that people want. I don't believe that you don't have it. Ling Jing's voice was lowered a little. He was already an evildoer. He deliberately lowered his voice and looked at her like this. If it were any other woman, she would definitely be tempted and would want to cling to him and not come down. However, Su Peijian was not any other woman. Ling Jing's problem was nothing more than a desire. She was now his sugar daddy, and he needed to please her. Let Xiao Zhao clean up the kitchen. Let's go. Where to? To eat. Su Peijian smelled the smell in the air and felt a little uncomfortable. You don't think I can still eat in such an environment, do you? Okay. I want to have a big meal. Su Peijian glanced at him and didn't refute. She knew that there was a very famous Western restaurant in Rome City. It was a chef from a Michelin star restaurant. Seeing that Ling Jing was trying so hard to please her, she decided to go there. The restaurant was in the center of Rome City. There was no vulgar restaurant with the same rotating pattern. However, it was indeed on the top floor, and all four sides were glass walls. The night was very cold, but the roof of Rome City had just snowed, and the ice and snow had not melted. Looking out from the window, under the neon lights, the snow became a little more romantic. After dinner, there were not many people in the restaurant. When Ling Jing entered the door, a manager inside saw him. His eyes widened, and he went forward to greet him. Ling Jing saw him and gave him a look. His eyes were very gloomy and cold. The manager's footsteps stopped there. Su Peijian followed Ling Jing's gaze to the manager and found that his face was a little pale. "Do you know him?" "No," Ling Jing answered quickly. "It's my first time here." He lied without changing his expression, and Su Peijian did not doubt him. The two of them sat down by the window. The waiter came forward to deliver the menu. Su Peijian handed the menu to Ling Jing. "There are a few signature dishes here that are well done. Their Italian food is quite authentic." She had been to Italy and tasted the authentic local cuisine. In comparison, the taste of this restaurant was really good. After the two of them ordered, the manager disappeared. Ling Jing breathed a sigh of relief. The game had not started yet. If someone recognized him and Su Peijian found out, they would not be able to continue playing. The dishes were soon served. The moment Su Peijian picked up the knife and fork, she glanced at Ling Jing and suddenly found that the other party's posture was very standard. She did not start eating, but just looked at Ling Jing for a while. Ling Jing raised his head under her gaze. "What's wrong? Have you learned Western food etiquette?" It was not unusual to have eaten Western food, but she could see that Ling Jing's movements were very standard. This kind of standard should not appear in such a gangster. Li Qianxue had specially hired a teacher to teach her etiquette. Whether it was Western food or Chinese food etiquette. But Ling Jing, a little gangster, how could he have such a standard dining etiquette? "I haven't learned it." Ling Jing's hand holding the fork slightly tightened. When he met Su Peijian's puzzled gaze, he smiled. "The last rich woman I followed was a foreign girl. I learned it from her." He said it very lightly. Su Peijian frowned slightly. She did not like this topic, so she did not ask again. She quietly ate the food on the plate, but Ling Jing was looking at her. Her movements were very elegant. She was like the daughter of a big family. He had noticed it a long time ago. But now, looking at her, wearing a simple business suit, sitting in this Western restaurant, it gave people the feeling that she was a princess, but a princess who was down and out. Ling Jing thought about his thoughts today. He originally wanted to move Su Peijian. This trick did not seem to work now. He could only think of other ways. Su Peijian did not know what Ling Jing was thinking. She enjoyed the rare relaxation in front of her. The similar taste of food reminded her of when she had traveled to Italy with Li Qianxue. Not only Italy, but she would travel with Li Qianxue every winter and summer vacation. They had been to many places. There was Su Yusin, the mother and son, from America to Europe, leaving their own footprints in many countries. Su Peijian's face was slightly pale as she stopped thinking. No matter how beautiful the memories were, they were all in the past that could not be returned. Ling Jing was sensitive to the fact that Su Peijian, who had been fine before going out, looked a little ugly after returning home after dinner. She went into the study almost as soon as she entered the door. He did not understand what went wrong, but at night, he tormented her slender body even more intensely. Since he could not think of other ways to please Su Peijian and make her fall in love with him, he would continue to let her indulge in his body and skills. Su Peijian was indeed particularly enthusiastic that night. It was said in books that when a woman's body was at its climax, it would go blank and forget to think. And such a short period of blankness was very suitable for her. Biting, scratching, and entangling. As her consciousness soared, Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing's enchanting face. Yes, this man did have the capital to seduce people. At least, she was very satisfied with his body and skills. Her occasional absent-mindedness always caused Ling Jing deeper dissatisfaction. He bit down hard on her neck, making her completely immersed in it. She thought in a daze that it was still a little bad. Not obedient enough, not submissive enough. Next time, she must make it clear to him not to leave any traces on her body. No traces should be left. This was a typical kind of egoism. In a relationship, she did not want the other party to leave any traces, so that she could leave at any time. And would she be able to do as she wished? Only God knew. Su Peijian looked at herself in the mirror. Her complexion looked good. This week, she returned to Rome Garden every day. She worked hard during the day and relaxed at night. After a few days, although she occasionally felt tired, it did give people a much better feeling. In private, she was willing to admit that Ling Jing was a good bed partner. After all, a man with a good appearance and a good life could indeed make people feel satisfied and fully relaxed. However, that was all. Her heart was too empty, and she could only rely on the shallow happiness of her body to fill it. Her phone rang. It was Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping asked her to go home for the festival. Tomorrow was the Lantern Festival. Su Peijian realized that she hadn't been home for a few days. She did not refuse and promised Xiang Kaiping that she would go home for dinner. She decided to accompany her for 2 days. When she hung up the phone, Ling Jing came in. He saw her sitting in front of the dresser and put his arms around her waist. He had just brushed his teeth, and there was a faint mint smell on his body. He was not wearing a shirt, and his chest muscles were strong and muscular. Su Peijian was not in the mood to appreciate his deliberately showing off. These days, she had been crazy enough with Ling Jing. She pushed him away. She got up to get her clothes. These days, Ling Jing had been tossing and turning at night. It could be considered crazy. From the look in his eyes, she knew that he was up to no good. Su Peijian was not in the mood to do it again, so she gently pushed him away. "I'm going out. Get out of my way." She thought that she might need to rest. It was true that he looked good, but it was also true that his waist was sore. The man was in the prime of his life and full of energy. She really couldn't take it anymore. "Where are you going?" It was the weekend. Shouldn't they spend the day in bed? Ling Jing kissed her neck and hugged her again, not intending to let go. "Does it have anything to do with you?" Su Peijian said ruthlessly. She pushed him away without a care and got up to pick out clothes in front of the wardrobe. Ling Jing came forward again and locked her between the wardrobe and his chest. "How can it have nothing to do with me? It's such a good weekend, and the weather is good. Don't you think we can do something more interesting?" "I don't think so." She hadn't been home for several days. If she didn't go back, Xiang Kaiping would think too much. "But I think..." Ling Jing lowered his head and wanted to kiss her again, but she avoided him. Her face darkened slightly. Obviously, she didn't like Ling Jing like this. "Ling Jing, I hope you understand that I have my own things to do. Get out of my way." "What if I don't?" Ling Jing looked at her half-open chest. The snow-white skin made his eyes darken a little. "What do you think?" Ling Jing was not the only one with a youthful and beautiful body. If he asked too much, or always liked to push his luck, Su Peijian believed that she would replace him without hesitation. Her eyes were slightly cold. Ling Jing stared at this woman and felt a toothache. In the past week, he could feel how passionate this woman was in bed. However, the more passionate she was in bed, the colder she was when she got out of bed. She was obviously the same person. How could she have two faces? They worked together seamlessly in bed. She was passionate, proactive, and sometimes even crazier than him. But it was only limited to bed. Once she got out of bed, this woman would immediately turn against him. Ling Jing stared at the cold expression on Su Peijian's face. He leaned over and bit her lips not too lightly or too heavily. He didn't use much force. Su Peijian was in pain and pushed him away. Enough. Su Peijian didn't have much patience. Move aside. I'm going to put on my clothes. She turned around and picked out the clothes to wear. She didn't avoid Ling Jing, who was standing beside her. She took off her nightgown and was about to put on her clothes. Ling Jing looked at her movements and became more and more angry. He threw the clothes in her hands aside and picked her up. What? So heartless. You're going to throw me away after using me. There was a trace of imperceptible anger in his tone. Su Peijian heard it, but she didn't understand. Ling Jing, are you mistaken about something? First, she hadn't thrown him away yet. Second, the two of them didn't seem to be in that kind of relationship. Before she could say anything else, Ling Jing had already thrown her onto the bed. I didn't get anything wrong. He pressed down on her and restrained her hands and feet. But if you want to leave today, you have to satisfy me first. Chapter 832. Ling Jing, let go of me. This time, Su Peijian's scolding didn't have any effect. There was a fire in Ling Jing's heart. An uncontrollable anger made his soul angry. I'll let go of you when I'm done. In the end, Su Peijian wasn't stronger than Ling Jing and let him have his way. She heard him whisper, do it once. If you can get out of bed, I'll let you go. She closed her eyes and let him be. Ling Jing kept his promise and only did it once. The moment Su Peijian got off the bed, she clearly felt that her legs were weak, as if she could barely stand. She didn't look at Ling Jing. She didn't even think about cleaning herself up. She just cleaned up, put on her clothes, and left. She made a decision in her heart. Ling Jing didn't know what to do. It seemed that she needed to give him the cold shoulder for a while. Ling Jing didn't expect that this damned woman could leave without hesitation after he worked so hard. Good. Really good. That was great. Damned woman, just you wait. Ling Jing's mind went through at least 100 ways to make that woman die. But in the end, his stubbornness came back. He didn't believe that his invincible charm would be defeated by Su Peijian, and he didn't believe that that woman could always be cold. This way wouldn't work. He could take another way. If that woman easily took the bait and fell in love with him, what was the point? The more it was like this, the more challenging it would be. You don't love me. It's okay. I'll find a way to make you fall in love with me one day. I'm going to waste my time with you. I don't believe that I, the young master of the Ling family, can't handle a woman. Su Peijian, we'll see. Su Peijian went home to spend the Lantern Festival with Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping wasn't good at business, but she lived a good life at home. She was good at cooking. She could cook some dishes from Lin City and Rong City. During the Lantern Festival, she suggested that she make the Lantern Festival herself. Su Peijian had never made it before. She wasn't interested in this kind of thing. However, she remembered that she had seen Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingsang making dumplings together on the surveillance camera. She didn't object to it. Instead, she was very interested in making dumplings with Xiang Kaiping. As it turned out, Su Peijian might have some talent in cooking. After breaking a few, she gradually got the hang of it. It looked quite presentable. Xiang Kaiping was very satisfied and liked it very much. It had just snowed, so Rome City was very cold. Outside, someone was not afraid of the cold and set off fireworks. Xiang Kaiping and Su Peijian sat together, the two of them. Looking at the fireworks in the distance and eating sweet glutinous rice balls, the atmosphere at this moment was undoubtedly very good. He received 2 congratulatory messages on his phone. One was from Su Qinghui, and the other was from Su Yusin. Su Peijian glanced at them. After a moment of hesitation, she put down her phone without replying to any of them. The moment she went upstairs, Xiang Kaiping stopped her. She wanted to tell her about Mrs. Lin's son, but she saw a red mark on Su Peijian's neck. Peijian. Xiang Kaiping was experienced, especially when she used to live with Su Qingsang. From time to time, Su Qingsang would have these marks on her body. She knew very well how it came about. But where did the marks on Su Peijian's body come from? Did she have a boyfriend? But it didn't look like it. She wanted to say that Lin Feixing had come to her house twice, the first time for New Year's greetings, and the second time for a visit. But when her eyes swept over the mark, she couldn't say a word. Did Su Peijian have a boyfriend? Peijian, after New Year's you'll be 1 year older. If there's a suitable one, you'll look everywhere. She had never been responsible for this daughter in the first half of her life, so she didn't have the confidence to say this. However, Xiang Kaiping was afraid that her daughter would always think about the past and refuse to look forward. I know. Su Peijian didn't like to talk about it. After making her stance clear, she went back to her room to rest. She didn't see Xiang Caiping's hesitant expression. After the Lantern Festival, Su Peijian was busy again. Recently, the company had a joint online and offline promotion. After the planning department sent the plan to her, she approved it. Then, on a whim, when it was almost time to get off work, she decided to go to the retail store to have a look. The office was on the top floor, so she took the elevator down. When she passed the escalator, she saw a pair of familiar figures in the distance. Su Peijian's footsteps froze. After a second of shock, she quickly reacted and stood to the side, directly behind the pillar. Since Su Peijian was released from prison, her heart was beating so fast that it was beating so fast. She leaned against the pillar, and her breathing was a little erratic. A middle-aged couple passed by the pillar. The man was gentle and elegant, while the woman was elegant and noble. She had her back to them, but she could hear their conversation. Their voice was soft, but it was very familiar. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have forgotten to bring a gift. Li Chinchue's voice was slightly low, almost like a little girl's. It was the first time Su Peijian had heard it. Okay, it's all my fault. Su Qinghui admitted his mistake, his voice full of love. Since the two of them got back together, he wanted to bring the whole world to Li Chinchue. He spoiled Li Chinchue so much that Li Chinchue, who had always been elegant and calm, would show a little bit of a young woman from time to time. It's your fault. Li Chinchue gritted her teeth slightly, still feeling a little uncomfortable. This bastard, last night he said he would only come once, but what happened in the end? She didn't know how his age still had such good stamina. She almost couldn't get up this morning. The two of them rushed to the airport. In the end, Li Chinchue forgot to bring the gift that she was supposed to give to old Master Hua and the Hua family. It was the new year, so Li Chinchue was too embarrassed to come empty-handed, so she had to pick a new gift. Okay. Don't be angry. The in-laws are all kind people, so they won't care about these empty gifts. They don't care, so you really have the nerve to come empty-handed. Li Chinchue couldn't help but stare at him again. Su Qinghui smiled and wrapped her hand in his palm. Then it's the same for us to pick now. It's fine as long as the intention is there. I believe the in-laws won't mind. I mind. Li Qianxue was a perfectionist, but she still felt a little depressed. She looked at Su Qinghui and added, "This time, I want to sleep with my daughter. You are not allowed to touch me again." The last sentence was said in a very low voice, and Su Qinghui's face changed. How could he do that? However, he thought of something and immediately smiled again. With the jealousy of his son-in-law, there was naturally a way to take his daughter away. He was not in a hurry. The voices of the two of them gradually became softer. Su Peijian didn't move. She just looked at their backs and listened to their conversation. Ever since she was a child, she had always known that the person Su Qinghui liked was not Li Qianxue. She had always thought that it was the same. Later, she found out that it was not. Su Qinghui didn't know that his feelings were wrong for decades. When he found out, everything was turned upside down. She used to think that everything would never go back to the beginning. Everything was messed up, and life was intertwined. How could she go back to the beginning? However, now that she saw Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui, she suddenly realized something. The so-called things remain the same, but people have changed was just for her. For others, it was leading everything back on track. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue were together in love. Su Qingsang became the daughter of the Su family and married into the Huo family as the wife of the president. It was as if everything had returned to the original and had never changed. However, her life had long changed beyond recognition, and she could never go back to the beginning. It turned out that she was the mistake. Wrong birth, wrong exchange. From beginning to end, her life seemed to have become a joke. How ridiculous and absurd was it? Su Peijian closed her eyes. Her heart, which had once been empty, was even emptier now. She looked at the crowd coming and going. It was very lively. There were couples, families, and sisters. She was the only one, alone. Ling Jing took some time to deal with some business that he had to handle. He originally wanted to go back to the house, but for some reason, he went back to Rome Garden. That woman didn't call him, nor did she send him a message. After leaving the day before yesterday, she went missing again. That damned woman, she really didn't take him seriously at all. He thought bitterly that he needed to come up with a plan to make that woman fall in love with him. He was going to go to that woman's place and look through all her secrets again. He didn't believe that he couldn't find that damned woman's weakness. He entered his fingerprint and entered the house. There was a smell of alcohol in the air. Ling Jing was stunned for a moment and looked at the woman sitting in the living room. She was wearing a Chanel suit, but at that moment, she was sitting on the ground without a care for her image. There were a few bottles of wine on the coffee table. 2 of them were already empty. He entered the house, but Su Peijian acted as if she didn't see him. She poured herself another glass of wine. She drank it in one gulp. Ling Jing could see that there was something wrong with this woman today. When he saw that Su Peijian was about to pour more wine, he stepped forward and snatched her glass away. "Give it to me." Her tone was gloomy, and her expression was cold. She was colder than the first time he met her. She was like a freezer, and within a 5-meter radius, there was only cold air released by her. "What's wrong? Something on your mind?" Ling Jing didn't want to give her the glass, so he wanted to find this woman's weakness. This woman was like this. TSK, someone handed her a pillow when she wanted to sleep. Su Peijian's reaction was to glance at him, take the wine bottle, and drink it directly. Ling Jing was stunned for a moment, then he tried to snatch the wine bottle from Su Peijian's hand again. "Are you crazy? Drinking like this? Do you want to die drunk?" All the wine on the table was hard liquor. "Does it have anything to do with you?" Su Peijian looked at him as if she was looking at an object. Ling Jing gritted his teeth, put the wine bottle and glass heavily on the coffee table, and pulled her up. He held her waist and stared at her face gloomily. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.